Chapter 48:51. Xia Jinyuan used a serious and cold expression to tell Yi Qian his attitude towards this matter. Yi Qian nodded solemnly and replied, "I will do my best to defeat Company Commander Zhu." Right now, she really couldn't care less about Company Commander Zhu's reputation. She relaxed and said, "Company Commander Zhu's name is very interesting. Zhu Barbar. Barbar Company Commander." Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but laugh. This is the nickname given to Company Commander Zhu by the regiment. Did you take it seriously? Qingniao, oh Qingniao, you have to learn to distinguish between the real and the fake. It was Yi Qian's turn to be speechless. She didn't know that Political Commissar Tang would mention Company Commander Zhu's nickname in front of her. "Didn't you say that nicknames are forbidden?" "It's not a big deal, and it's not an insult, so it's still okay. At that time, I was even given the nickname Ruo Shui by the veterans in the unit. Later, I used my fists and IQ to show them who was the real Ruo Shui." Xia Jinyuan looked to the front. "Your battle has begun. Go up and introduce yourself." He wasn't worried that Yi Qian would have stage fright, because he knew that his beloved girl was strong when faced with strong opponents. She was brave in challenges and would never back down. Yi Qian walked over to Political Commissar Tang's side and saluted all the soldiers present. "Hello everyone, I am the instructor of the female squad, Yi Qian. Please give me your guidance." In the blue sky without a single cloud, against the backdrop of the Gobi Desert, the female instructor, Yi Qian, walked over with her sleeves full of spiritual energy. Standing in front of hundreds of male soldiers, she seemed to have been stained by the Gobi Desert for thousands of years. She faced them calmly without the slightest bit of fear. Yi Qian chose to use the same method as Xia Jinyuan to establish his dominance. A total of 5 soldiers, including Company Commander Zhu, took turns to fight. The soldiers who were standing upright were all shocked. Although they didn't show it on their faces, their hearts were in turmoil. She was actually the same as Captain Xia. How could she be the same as Captain Xia? One was a captain from the Special Forces, while the other had just graduated from a military academy. Company Commander Zhu clicked his tongue. Wow, he was so brave and courageous. He even dared to imitate Captain Xia, who used to be a Special Forces soldier, and do the wheel stand. He still wanted to persuade her, but Xia Jinyuan said, "Our female instructor has already issued a challenge. Do our male soldiers have the guts to accept it?" Company Commander Zhu widened his eyes. He suddenly felt that Captain Xia, who he liked, was somewhat similar to Political Commissar Tang. The male soldiers answered in unison, "Yes, yes, yes." "Okay, I'll accept it then," Xia Jinyuan said loudly. "Company Commander Zhu, it's up to you." Company Commander Zhu led 4 male soldiers into the arena. Before he could say anything, Yi Qian said with a smile, "Company Commander Zhu, let's skip the pleasantries and start the sparring match. What do you think?" Company Commander Zhu, who had deliberately prepared a few words in advance, paused for a moment before nodding. "Deal." How could he not agree? He had to agree. If he didn't, Political Commissar Tang, who was waiting to watch a good show, would definitely scold him as a grandson. All the soldiers sat down cross-legged and enthusiastically applauded to show that they couldn't wait to watch the sparring match. Company Commander Zhu did as Political Commissar Tang said. He took off his clothes as soon as he entered the arena, but this time, he was more reserved. He wore a fitness t-shirt underneath and said, "Call out the numbers." Xia Jinyuan immediately shouted, 1, 2, 3, begin." The match began as soon as he said so. The 2 people in the arena moved at almost the same speed. They clenched their fists tightly and shouted as they punched each other. Company Commander Zhu held back a little until Yi Qian, who was charging at him from the front, suddenly moved. His hands were so fast that they blurred in front of his eyes. He took a heavy punch to the right side of his waist. Chapter 48:52. The entire training ground was silent for at least 3 seconds. The soldiers expressed their current feelings with dumbfounded expressions on their faces. Political Commissar Tang's eyes were wide open. He was sure he didn't see wrongly. Female Instructor Yi first punched Zhu Gangang. So fierce. Company Commander Zhu was even more dumbfounded. She punched him? He was punched. Good. Political Commissar Tang's earth-shattering cheers came from the silent training ground. Thus, the soldiers of the 3 companies also cheered. Company Commander Zhu listened to the cheers with a solemn expression. He felt sullen and a mouthful of blood was stuck in his throat. The political commissar in their battalion seemed to hate him very much. The more unlucky he was, the happier the political commissar would be. Company Commander Zhu clenched his fists and punched again. Company Commander Zhu stopped looking down on her with one punch. The soldiers cheered with political commissar Tang. As for him, it hurt. The area where he was punched was quite painful. This punch showed him that the female instructor in front of him wasn't just for show. It also showed him that the female soldier was very strong. Company Commander Zhu attacked again with a fierce gust of wind. The air was so fierce that it seemed to be distorted by his iron fist. Political Commissar Tang said that Company Commander Zhu's iron fists were very strong. Seeing that he used his fists as the vanguard in both attacks, Yi Qian focused on his iron fists and used his lower body to attack. His arms were used for defense and his legs were used for offense. Company Commander Zhu clenched his fists and the muscles in his arms bulged. Yi Qian focused his attacks on his elbows and shoulders. He quickly retreated to avoid Company Commander Zhu's punches and swings. After dodging several times, Yi Qian kicked at Company Commander Zhu's lower body at lightning speed. He aimed for the base of his thigh. This was also a weak spot. After being kicked, it would often make it impossible for a person to raise their leg for a long time. The moves in the Snowfield Brigade were either killing moves or attacking the weak spots of the human body. They would first hinder the enemy's movement and then find an opportunity to eliminate them in one fell swoop. The person involved, Zhu Lian, was shocked. He realized that the female military instructor that he thought was normal was not normal at all. His moves and routines were the same as Captain Xia's. They were all killer moves and full of murderous intent. He did not seem like a cadet who had just graduated from the military academy. As a soldier who guarded this special area, Company Commander Zhu's hands were stained with blood. Because of this, the more he fought, the more frightened he became, and the more serious his eyes became. Female Instructor Yi had definitely killed someone before. He was 100% sure and would not accept any doubt. Company Commander Zhu, whose lower body was being attacked repeatedly, had no choice but to quickly retreat until his knee was hit. A heart-wrenching pain engulfed him, and amidst another round of cheers, Company Commander Zhu retreated a few steps. He had no choice but to stand still and move his left leg that had been hit. Yi Qian retracted her long leg and clenched her hands into fists. She did not give Company Commander Zhu even half a second to rest and adjust. She was so fast that small whirlwinds formed on the ground. The whirlwinds swept up yellow dust, and she attacked directly with great ferocity. The biggest taboo in close combat was to have one's body part grabbed by the opponent and used to inflict heavy damage. When Company Commander Zhu saw this, his first thought was not to attack, but to defend. He used his iron fists to defend. Although Yi Qian was attacking, Company Commander Zhu's iron fists were not easy to deal with. Even if he was defending, she was still under pressure. After a few rounds, her arms were hurting. She could not continue like this. If this went on, she doubted that she would be able to raise her arms tomorrow. She had to knock Company Commander Zhu down as soon as possible. Chapter 48-53. The winner of the sparring match was the one who knocked the opponent to the ground. Company Commander Zhu thought the same way too. He was already scared out of his wits and realized that he had underestimated the female soldier, Instructor Yi, so much so that now he couldn't say anything about it. Xia Jinyuan, who was watching from the side, had a faint smile on his thin lips. He stood by the side like a pine tree under the moonlight. Occasionally, he would see Yi Qian's moves. His eyes would narrow slightly, but no one knew what he was thinking. The instructors of First Company, Second Company, and Third Company had already walked over. They were in charge of the various training for their company commanders. They were all at least 5 years old, and they were strict and didn't like to smile. When new recruits first came in, the instructors were usually the first thing they feared the most. Xia Jinyuan was now the instructor of Third Company, so naturally, he was temporarily the chief instructor of the entire battalion. If they had any questions, they would naturally look for him. Just now, Xia Jinyuan had sparred with the instructors of Third Company, and Yi Qian had learned combat from the Snowfield Brigade. Naturally, their moves were similar. After the instructors in charge of the training noticed something, they all came over to verify their guesses. Faced with the 3 instructors' guesses, Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, "You didn't see wrong. She is indeed a soldier under my tutelage. She can also be considered a special forces soldier. Otherwise, why would I let her spar with the soldiers? If she goes up, the 3 of you." Xia Jinyuan smiled and glanced at the instructors, whose expressions instantly tensed up. "The 3 of you are really no match for her. I can't gain an advantage in front of her either. None of my soldiers have ever gained an advantage in front of her." The 3 instructors looked at each other when he said this. Why did she become the instructor of the female soldiers? Because of her strength. Xia Jinyuan was quite proud when he said this. The former weak girl had worked hard to become a strong person who could contend with evil, step by step. He had a part to play in this, so how could he not feel proud? The instructor of Third Company glanced at the female instructor, who clearly had the upper hand. His Adam's apple moved slightly, and he whispered, "Then won't Company Commander Zhu lose for sure? From the looks of it, there's an 80% to 90% chance of losing," Xia Jinyuan answered honestly, at least saving Company Commander Zhu some face. It wasn't an 80% to 90% chance of losing, it was a definite loss. The 3 drill masters held their breath. Company Commander Zhu had defeated the entire regiment with his iron fist. The 3 of them could not gain much of an advantage against Company Commander Zhu. They did not expect that they would lose to a female military instructor. Before the female military instructor went on stage, the vice company commander had specially instructed them to act according to the situation. It was obvious that he had doubts about the ability of the female military instructor. All of a sudden, the 3 instructors felt their faces burning. The close combat had reached its climax. Both of them used their legs and used so much force that their bodies collided with each other. Company Commander Zhu took a few steps back like a drunkard. Meanwhile, the reaction of the female military instructor made all the surrounding soldiers cheer and almost rush out of the sky. She didn't retreat. Instead, she did a nimble somersault. Then, like a fierce tiger, she knelt on one knee with one hand on her bent knee and the other hand on the ground. During the fight, Yi Qian's training cap fell to the side. Her short hair was neatly trimmed, and her face was covered in sweat. Her delicate eyebrows emitted a sword-like aura. She was beautiful, but her beauty was completely ignored. It was suppressed by the hostility in her black eyes. Seeing Yi Qian, everyone, including Political Commissar Tang, shifted their gazes from Yi Qian to Company Commander Zhu, who was panting heavily. Company Commander Zhu was going to lose. Chapter 48-54. They didn't communicate, but the same thought flashed through their minds. Xia Jinyuan spat out 2 words coldly, "Countdown." He meant that they were counting down to the end. The 3 company instructors clenched their fists and broke out in a cold sweat for Company Commander Zhu. They could tell that Instructor Yi was very strong. They believed that Company Commander Zhu, who was sparring, could tell as well. If he really lost to Instructor Yi, it would be a little embarrassing. However, Instructor Yi was very strong, so there was nothing to be embarrassed about. The fight ended very quickly. Company Commander Zhu's iron fists couldn't do anything to Yi Qian, who was trained in the special forces. His wrist was tightly clamped by her, and her fist hit Company Commander Zhu's armpit hard. With a ferocious roar, Yi Qian fiercely twisted her iron fist around Company Commander Zhu's back. She twisted his arm backwards, and the intense pain made Company Commander Zhu's expression change. Large drops of sweat also followed. He didn't give up resisting. He used his other movable hand to hit Yi Qian, and hooked his leg tightly around Yi Qian's left calf. Good. Good. Instructor Yi, you can do it. Company Commander, you can do it. The back and forth was really exciting. The soldiers watching couldn't help but clap and cheer again. Company Commander Zhu also repeatedly cheered for Yi Qian's fierceness. Neither of them tripped the other immediately. Even though Yi Qian's left calf was hooked by Company Commander Zhu's back, her slender legs seemed to be rooted to the ground. No matter how tightly Company Commander Zhu hooked her, the crutch didn't budge. After blocking Company Commander Zhu's iron fist, Yi Qian used her elbow to strike Company Commander Zhu's neck. If this was a real battle, Yi Qian would use her elbow to strike the enemy's head. After all, sparring was just sparring. One could win, but one could not be injured. Therefore, every time Yi Qian attacked, he would always avoid the fatal point. Every time he attacked, he would always attack the weak points that would impede the opponent's mobility and cause them to feel pain and focus their attention. Company Commander Zhu only had time to yell in his mind. His vision turned black from the blow to his neck, and he lost the strength in his arms. Yi Qian seized the opportunity to press down on Company Commander Zhu's raised leg with one leg and hit his knee hard. When the instructors of the three companies heard Captain Xia laugh and say, "It's over," Company Commander Zhu, who was short and muscular, was knocked down by the female soldiers. The impact of the fall was very strong. Company Commander Zhu, who had fallen to the ground, was thrown into the air. Yellow dust flew around him like a mountain that had collapsed. Even his fall was majestic. The main reason was that Yi Qian's momentum when he knocked down Company Commander Zhu was so majestic that the soldiers watching the battle couldn't help but shudder. The female soldier's instructor was amazing. She looked thin and weak. Her arms and neck were so thin that they could grab her with one hand. They didn't expect her body to contain so much strength. Before the battle, they were all skeptical of the female instructor's ability. But after the battle, they cheered for Instructor Yi the entire time. She let them know that female soldiers could be so powerful. Company Commander! Company Commander! Instructor Yi! Instructor Yi! The cheers were louder and fiercer than before. The applause came wave after wave. Most of them were cheering for Instructor Yi's vigor. The military was a place where the strong were respected. Strength would quickly gain the recognition of the soldiers. Company Commander Zhu, who was covered in yellow dust, choked on some yellow dust. He coughed as he got up. He patted the dust off his hands. He didn't feel embarrassed about losing. Instead, he laughed loudly. "Instructor Yi, I need to apologize to you. I used to think that you were just SOSO. I was blind. I sincerely apologize to you. Please forgive me." Chapter 48-55. He was magnanimous and even took the initiative to apologize for his previous contempt. What a great husband! Yi Jian lifted his arms that were aching from his bones. He smiled and said, "Sergeant Zhu, your iron fists are amazing. Thank goodness for Political Commissar Tang's reminder, or else I would have suffered greatly under your iron fists." It seemed like an ordinary sentence, but it actually saved Company Commander Zhu's face. As a company commander, he had more than 100 soldiers under him, so he had to save some face. Company Commander Zhu was a straightforward person. A loss was a loss, and there was no excuse for it. "No matter how strong my iron fists are, they can't beat your punches and kicks. Impressive, truly impressive." Our political commissar Tang also reminded me that since you were sent to be the female soldier's instructor, you must have some outstanding qualities. He told me not to judge you based on your appearance. As for me, I said that I didn't have any objections, but I did. I was just afraid that you were a delicate military school student who couldn't handle hardships and couldn't accomplish great things. Political Commissar Tang was so angry that he glared at me. He pointed at my nose and scolded me, saying that I would definitely suffer at your hands. If he was right, then I would be asking for trouble. Company Commander Zhu picked up his training uniform jacket and admitted his loss. He also won applause from the soldiers. After putting on his uniform, Company Commander Zhu smiled at the other 4 male soldiers and said, "Come, let's line up and get beaten up. I'll take the risk first, and then I'll retreat. As for the 4 of you, do as you see fit." Do as you see fit. It's fine. The 4 male soldiers refused in their hearts, but they were men and couldn't go back on their word. How could they admit defeat just because Instructor Yi was stronger? Even if they were beaten black and blue, they had to do it. Then let's do it. The male soldiers were prepared to be beaten up, so they bravely walked up the stage with expressions that said they would never return. Company Commander Zhu wiped the sweat off his forehead and walked to Xia Jinyuan's side. He sighed and said, "Captain Xia, are you hiding something? Since I got beaten up, can you be honest with me?" The end of the confession was, Company Commander Zhu felt even more ashamed of himself. It was only natural for him to lose, so there was nothing to be ashamed of. She's a female soldier from the Special Forces, and she's even your soldier. Even you, the captain, have suffered a loss. Captain Xia, oh Captain Xia, if you had told me earlier, I wouldn't have asked for trouble. Captain Xia smiled at Company Commander Zhu, whose face was covered in dust and sweat. He didn't say anything. Everything was in his smile. Company Commander Zhu narrowed his eyes and let out a long "oh" to indicate that he understood. Company Commander Zhu, who understood what was going on, said bitterly, Captain Xia, to think that I thought you were a kind person. I didn't expect that he would dig a deep pit for me and wait for me to jump in. Company Commander Zhu, I didn't expect you to personally participate. I didn't expect Instructor Yi to be on the same side as you. Otherwise, why would the military send her here? The training of female soldiers is sometimes more tiring than that of male soldiers. As Xia Jinyuan spoke, he smiled and looked at the figure in the field who was sparring with the male soldiers again. His eyes were focused, and he didn't spare a glance at anyone else. Company Commander Zhu, who had bumped into a wall, finally realized the truth. Political Commissar Tang wasn't on the field. He didn't even see the exciting scene of Yi Qian knocking down Company Commander Zhu. The secretary came to tell him that the officer in charge of bringing the female soldiers into the barracks had called, so Political Commissar Tang went back to his office to answer the call. By the time he finished the call, Yi Qian had already fought 3 people in a row. When he learned that Company Commander Zhu had been knocked down by Yi Qian, Political Commissar Tang gloated and felt that it was a pity that he didn't get to see Company Commander Zhu make a fool of himself. Chapter 4856. Political Commissar Tang purposely walked up to Company Commander Zhu and said a few sarcastic words. However, Company Commander Zhu was so angry that he couldn't catch his breath. How could a political commissar be so petty? The petty Political Commissar Tang laughed and said, 14 years of humiliation can be washed away in one day. How delightful! Facing the Political Commissar who would make fun of him from time to time, Company Commander Zhu, as a captain, could only pinch his nose and accept it. His military rank was low and his position was low. He had to accept it even if he didn't want to. Political Commissar Tang felt that after this lesson, Company Commander Zhu would not dare to look down on the female soldiers easily in the future. Even if there were 20 female soldiers arriving later, Company Commander Zhu would not dare to look down on them. As for the company commanders of 1st Company and 2nd Company who had not returned, they would not make the same mistake as Zhu Gongong. At this time, the female soldiers had already set off for more than 2 hours. If everything went well, they would arrive before 2 p.m. Yi Qian was having a good time with the male soldiers. The female soldiers who came to the barracks were also having a good time chatting in the car. It was the first time for the female soldiers from all over the country to come to the northwest. They were attracted by the spectacular scenery along the way and exclaimed from time to time. After sitting for more than 2 hours, the scenery was still the same. They started to feel bored. After a round of self-introductions, they started to have some topics to talk about. They talked about their former units and why they came to the northwest for no reason. After chatting, they found out that everyone was supposed to go to the Nanguang military district. They did not know why they all came to the northwest. It's impossible to transfer. In the future, we will be the northwest female soldiers. It will be harder to go home than before. Yes, I don't even dare to tell my family. I'm afraid they will be worried. I'm from Nanguang. I'm getting farther and farther away from Nanguang. I'm from Yun Province. I'm farther away than you. I'm from the northerners by the Mo River. Who's farther away than me? There's one. I'm also from the northerners. I can see North Korea from the mountains. This girl was the closest to them. She came from the northernmost part of the country and then came to the northwest. 6 to 7 hours of travel was enough for the female soldiers to get to know each other. Because they were all from different units and had been notified to come to the northwest at the last minute, plus they were all female soldiers who had passed the selection, they had a lot of common topics to talk about. Some felt like old friends at first sight, while others only had a few words of courtesy. At around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun shone on the yellow sand, creating a thin layer of white light. The 20 female soldiers finally arrived at the camp after a bumpy journey that made their butts hurt. The sentry checked the documents of the soldiers and officers in the vehicles, pulled open the barbed fence, and let them pass. At 2:15, the female soldiers got off the bus and regrouped. Then, they were led into the barracks by the soldiers. The one who received the female soldiers was a squad leader of the male soldiers. Facing the 20 female soldiers, the squad leader maintained a serious face and led the female soldiers to a 3-story dormitory building. He first arranged the rooms for the 20 female soldiers. Due to the limited conditions, the female soldiers shared a dormitory for 5 people. There were a total of 4 rooms. He also told the female soldiers that their instructor had been waiting for a long time and that they should return to the dormitory to rest first. The instructor might come directly to the dormitory to look for them, or he might show up immediately. After that, the male squad leader looked at the 20 female soldiers meaningfully. It was now 2:20. There were still 10 minutes before the afternoon exercise. It depended on whether they wanted to gather or not. So far, the 20 female soldiers still didn't know whether their instructor was a man or a woman. They didn't ask either. Subconsciously, they thought it was a male instructor. At 2:30, the camp bugle call sounded. The 20 female soldiers all reacted very quickly. They didn't need to be reminded. They packed up and ran out as fast as they could. They were all female soldiers. When they heard the bugle call, it was a conditioned reflex for them to gather. They didn't turn a deaf ear to the change in environment. Chapter 48-57. The selected female soldiers weren't just for show. In the previous army they could compete with the male soldiers. Their skills, speed, and reflexes were all quite good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been selected. Their military qualities were good. Even if the officer told them that they could rest in the barracks and wait for the instructor to show up, they wouldn't turn a deaf ear when the whistle was blown. The female soldiers in the 5 dormitories rushed out of their dormitories as soon as the whistle was blown. They were fully equipped and ready to go. They were all qualified from head to toe. Even Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong, who didn't like each other, didn't make things difficult for each other when they heard the whistle. They rushed out of their dormitories at the same time. No one asked where they were going to gather, nor did they ask if anyone would show up later. The 20 female soldiers, who were used to obeying orders, were all agile and ran after the male soldiers. The male soldiers in the barracks didn't notice the female soldiers at first, who would observe the figures running around them while running. No one paid attention, so naturally no one noticed them. However, Yi Qian noticed them. She came out of Political Commissar Tang's office and returned to the dormitory building. She saw several female soldiers with slender bodies who were obviously different from the male soldiers. They were running with the male soldiers. From the time the whistle was blown to when she saw the figures of the female soldiers, only a few seconds had passed. "Captain Xia, I have more confidence in them than before." Seeing several slender figures running out, Yi Qian smiled and said to the man beside him, "Half a year. Although time is a bit tight, I think it's still possible to bring them in." She couldn't stay in the northwest for a long time, and she couldn't lead the female soldiers all the time. Therefore, she could only bring the female soldiers in half a year and embark on the road to becoming a female Special Forces soldier. Xia Jinyuan didn't notice the female soldiers immediately. He only noticed them when Yi Qian raised his hand and pointed at them. He glanced at them and calmly looked away. "You'll have an easier time if they're more sensible. At present, their military qualities are not bad, but you can't say for sure immediately. Distance tests a horse's strength, and time reveals a person's heart. Whether they're good or bad, it still needs to be verified." In his eyes, no matter how powerful a female soldier was, it was impossible for her to be as powerful as this female soldier, even though he could count the number of female soldiers he had seen with his fingers. When Yi Qian heard this, he cast a sidelong glance at him and said with a half-smile, "Captain Xia, do you have no confidence in me? There seems to be a misunderstanding." The desire to live made Lieutenant Colonel Xia immediately explain with a straight face, "That's not it. I've always looked at things that I'm not responsible for from the sidelines. Whether it's good or bad, you'll only know after you practice. I have absolute confidence in you, but I don't know much about them, so naturally I don't have much confidence in them. However, I believe that under your training, they will definitely improve." Yi Qian nodded in satisfaction. "That's more like it." When he saw the female soldiers running out and following the male soldiers, Yi Qian said, "I originally wanted to go to each dormitory to familiarize myself with them, but that won't do now. Since they've all gone, as their instructor, I have to go too." Xia Jinyuan agreed, but asked with a smile, "Do you know where they will gather?" "How could I not know if I ran with them?" Yi Qian glanced at his family members who still wanted to laugh at him and pointed at his own head. "Captain Xia, I bring my brain with me every day." Chapter 48-58. Speaking of which, Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but laugh. He had an extremely handsome face, and his bright smile was like the faint rays of the sun on the horizon. He had a charm that made people unable to stop looking at him. Yi Qian quickly looked away. "You can also cross the field now. I'll go first." Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who still didn't know that he had inadvertently blinded his girlfriend with his looks, reminded him again, "Remember everything I said before. Since there are a few troublesome people in the class with military ranks, you can't look down on them just because they're inexperienced. You must establish your authority. You must establish your authority as soon as possible." Until today, Xia Jinyuan was still worried that Yi Qian wouldn't be able to establish his authority as soon as possible. It wasn't that Xia Jinyuan was overthinking things, and it wasn't that he didn't have confidence in Yi Qian. Everything stemmed from the fact that he had suffered losses before. When he first entered the Snowfield Brigade, he left his current comrades with the impression that he was a pretty boy. Although he managed to subdue them within a week, he still couldn't let it go. He didn't want Yi Qian, who had been working so hard and stepping on thorns, to encounter such a situation. That was why he reminded him again and again. Among the 20 female soldiers, there were not only first-class soldiers and non-commissioned officers who had served for more than 3 years, but there were also female soldiers with the ranks of first lieutenant and second lieutenant. Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong were both first lieutenant. The two of them originally belonged to the same unit, and their personal grudges also originated from the same unit. Remembering Xia Jinyuan's reminder, Yi Qian took a shortcut and ran to the field as fast as he could. The northwest was vast and sparsely populated, so the barracks were naturally large. The assembly point for the 3 companies of male soldiers was also not bad. The assembly point for each platoon was also not bad. It all depended on where the female soldiers would choose to assemble. Knowing that they didn't know the assembly point, the 20 female soldiers had a tacit understanding and didn't run too far apart so that they wouldn't be able to find the main unit. 3 minutes was enough for them to quickly discuss. In the end, they reached a consensus that they would run to whichever training ground was the largest, and whichever was the emptiest. As for whether or not the instructor would find them, it wasn't within their consideration. It was a dereliction of duty as an instructor to not show up immediately and tell them where to gather. The female soldiers' minds had always been more flexible than the male soldiers. They had more ideas, so naturally they were more calculative. Moreover, they had come to the northwest with some resentment, more or less with some personal feelings. However, they were also a group of qualified soldiers with good military qualities who absolutely obeyed orders. Even if there were a few emotions, they would not cause trouble. Yi Qian, who had taken the shortcut, did not think too much about it. Instead, he was very satisfied with the female soldiers' reactions. Looking at the direction the female soldiers were running in, Yi Qian knew they were going to the sports field. In the afternoon, the sports field was Team Xia's home ground. His side had selected a group of elite. There weren't many of them, only 20 male soldiers. In the words of Company Commander Zhu, he didn't want too much, just enough for the female soldiers to practice. It was also impossible for Xia Jinyuan to train with all 500 soldiers in the barracks every day. Selecting 20 elites was exactly what he wanted. However, Company Commander Zhu couldn't make this decision. Although Political Commissar Tang also agreed, he couldn't make the final decision. The battalion commander had to come back first. Political Commissar Tang said it wasn't a big problem. They would select first and wait for the battalion commander to come back before making the final decision. Therefore, the 500 soldiers all gathered at the sports field this afternoon, and 20 elites were selected in one day. The deputy companies of the 3 companies had already recommended candidates, and the number of people was far more than 20 elite. For the sake of fairness, the soldiers had to compete among themselves, and the winner would be selected. Chapter 48-59. 3 minutes later, except for the sentries and patrolling soldiers, all the cookhouse soldiers were standing in line. When the 20 female soldiers saw this, they immediately went to the leftmost position and lined up with the male soldiers. When the male soldiers on the leftmost line saw this, they couldn't help but tense up. They straightened their backs and looked more serious. They stared straight ahead and didn't dare to look to their sides. Why are they standing next to him? Why are they standing so close to him? Why aren't they resting? Why are they doing exercises together? Instructor Yi, why aren't you taking your soldiers? The male soldiers were quite nervous. If Company Commander Zhu knew about this, he would definitely kick them again and call them cowards. The leftmost line was the soldiers of 2nd Company. When the deputy company commander of 2nd Company saw that there was an extra line next to his soldiers, he almost cursed out loud. He even thought that his soldiers were stupid. His heart skipped a few beats. The deputy company commander glared and quickly ran to Company Commander Zhu to report this. When Company Commander Zhu heard this, he waved his hand and said disapprovingly, "Then let them watch. With Instructor Yi watching, they won't do anything." Company Commander Zhu respected Instructor Yi, who took down 5 male soldiers in a row, as a man. That's right, Yi Qian's glorious image in Company Commander Zhu's heart was that of a man. The deputy company commander of 2nd Company panicked. But they can't stand next to our company. Let's go somewhere else, let's go somewhere else. Why should we go somewhere else? It's either the left or the right. They've already chosen the left. What's the point of going somewhere else? Company Commander Zhu's dark face fell. Why should we go somewhere else? The deputy company commander didn't know why, but he just didn't feel good about it. It was definitely impossible to go somewhere else, especially when Company Commander Zhu saw the manly Instructor Yi. It was even more impossible for him to agree to the deputy company commander's unreasonable request. What else could the deputy company commander do? He had no choice. Then, he went to his own company and walked past the soldiers who were standing as straight as a white birch tree. Today we are selecting people. When the soldiers of our company go on stage, raise your voice. Don't embarrass me. Do you see the female soldiers at the side? They are not simple. They are all selected soldiers from the original army. Don't let the female soldiers look down on you. My skin is all tensed up. Who's going to embarrass me? You better be mentally prepared. It was the first time a group of female soldiers had come to the barracks. Not to mention the company commanders, even the male soldiers felt the same. The female soldiers were calmer than the male soldiers. They were used to being stared at in their original unit. Here, it was just a change of location to be stared at. There was nothing to be afraid of. It was just that the sun was unusually strong and it was so hot that it hurt. Although the temperature in the northwest in September was low in the mornings and mornings, due to the high altitude, the sun shone brightly. Although the temperature was low, the threat of the sun was great. Once they were in a shady place, it would be cool and comfortable. The female soldier who stood facing the sun brought out the valiant and heroic bearing of a female soldier. She was like a green scenery in the desert, refreshing the mind. Political Commissar Tang smiled and said to Xia Jinyuan, "It seems that we have to consider recruiting more female soldiers in the future. Female soldiers are not inferior to male soldiers. Instructor Yi is the best example. Who said that women were inferior to men? When women were powerful, they were definitely fighter jets." Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, "In the future, when the policy is relaxed, there will definitely be more and more female soldiers. The threshold for female soldiers is high now. The situation is a problem. We can only slowly develop in the future. When more positions need female soldiers in the army, there will be more and more female soldiers." There were very few female soldier quotas in various places. Sometimes, a city or a county only had a few female soldier quotas. Sometimes, these quotas might not fall into the hands of the civilians fairly. The local armed forces would directly distribute the quotas. Chapter 4860. Political Commissar Tang seemed to have thought of something as the smile on his face faded a little. Then he sighed softly. The situation and policy issues are more important, but local issues also exist. This is also the reason why Company Commander Zhu did not have high hopes for female soldiers. There were some issues that Political Commissar Tang could not say directly, so he could only vaguely mention them. Xia Jinyuan understood why Political Commissar Tang sighed. At that time, I also strongly opposed Yi Qian accepting a female soldier class. His faint sentence let Political Commissar Tang know that he understood his sigh. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. They had a tacit understanding and did not continue to talk. These days, female soldiers had a certain amount of family connections. It was fine as long as everyone understood it in their hearts, so there was no need to say it out loud. Sometimes they really had to pretend not to know. The topic changed to the selection of 20 elite male soldiers. As they chatted, the battalion commander who went to the base was about to return. Father Fu, who left the barracks in the morning to return to the base, was chatting with the battalion commander who was about to return to the barracks. He mentioned his daughter, Yi Qian. The battalion commander's surname was Tian. He had known Father Fu for 10 years. Although one was a lieutenant colonel and the other was a major general, the two of them had been good friends for many years. Naturally, he knew his friend's personal situation. Until he got into the car, Battalion Commander Tian still had not digested the fact that his good friend had a biological daughter. His biological daughter was the instructor of the female soldier class transferred to his barrack. His mother's father. Such a big news almost choked him to death. In order to see Yi Qian sooner, his niece, Battalion Commander Tian, jumped into the car and urged the motorist to drive faster. Company Commander's son, who came along with him, was shocked. He thought that something big had happened in the barracks and quickly asked what was going on. Due to various reasons, I haven't made it public yet. Old Tian, I'm telling you today. It's because my daughter is in your barracks and you're a fierce person. I'm worried that my daughter will be scolded by you, so I can only tell you in advance. I didn't take the initiative to mention the others. The only people in the base who know are the orderlies who followed me. Therefore, Battalion Commander Tian did not tell Company Commander's son that he had rushed back to see his niece, who had appeared out of nowhere and almost shocked him to death. He only told him that the female soldiers had arrived and that he should return to the army as soon as possible. Not many people in the camp were optimistic about the arrival of the female soldiers. Company Commander's son, who was born and raised in the Northwest, said in a low voice, "After we go back early, I still have to control the male soldiers in the company." He wouldn't make any mistakes. At most, he would sneak a few glances at the female soldiers. Yi Qian, the niece of Battalion Commander Tian, was currently standing at the very back of the female soldiers. Every time she walked past a female soldier, she would size them up and memorize their names. She had looked at the roster and the personal information of the 20 female soldiers. She had already memorized their names and photos. She came back this time just to recognize their faces and nothing else. When he walked past Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong, Yi Qian did not walk right past them. Instead, he paused for a few seconds before walking away. The female soldiers were already muttering in their hearts. Why was there a captain walking past them in the middle of their formation? They couldn't see her badge out of the corner of their eyes, only her armband and epaulets. They didn't know if she was a civilian or not. None of the female soldiers thought that the captain walking past them was their instructor. A female soldier who looked slender and delicate, but who knew how many times more ruthless than the male soldiers. She was also the instructor who was still fresh in their memories throughout their entire military career, even long after they had retired. Chapter 48-61. Although the female soldiers didn't know the identity and position of the captain who walked past them, they were all smart people. Since he was able to walk freely in their formation, he must be someone of a certain status. Even if they had doubts in their hearts, they didn't directly size him up and allowed him to walk past them. They looked straight ahead and stood tall and straight, not losing out to the male soldiers at all. The scenery in the Gobi Desert was very simple. Everything was yellow as far as the eye could see. Even the ground under their feet was yellow. A group of beautiful and youthful female soldiers standing in the training ground became the most beautiful scenery in the entire camp. Company Commander Zhu glanced at them a few times and whispered to Xia Jinyuan, "Do you think they can all persevere? Does Instructor Yi have any experience leading a team? I see that all of them are very energetic and none of them are to be trifled with. I'm afraid that Instructor Yi will suffer some losses in their hands. You have to keep a close eye on them when the time comes. Find out which one of them is dishonest. Give them a direct warning and remind them that they must be disciplined." Company Commander Zhu didn't take the loss to heart. Instead, he thought of taking care of Yi Qian. Xia Jinyuan looked in the direction of the female soldiers and found Yi Qian at first glance. He could feel her calmness even from a distance. It was obvious that she wasn't flustered because it was her first time leading a team. Instructor Ye's ability is enough to handle it. If you can't even control the soldiers, then it's better to give up your position early. Don't delay the progress of the female soldiers' training. Hurry up and report to the military headquarters for a replacement. Xia Jinyuan wasn't joking when he said this. If he found out that Yi Qian really couldn't make the female soldiers obey her orders and disobeyed her orders, he wouldn't immediately hold the female soldiers responsible. Instead, he would hold the instructor responsible. She couldn't even lead the soldiers well. Useless. Why should he keep an incompetent person? No matter how much Xia Jinyuan loved Yi Qian, was loyal to the country, and had heavy responsibilities on his shoulders, he wouldn't tolerate her. Company Commander Zhu was frightened by the coldness in Xia Jinyuan's tone. His eyelids twitched a few times. You're really not biased. You can even do such a thing. Of course. Personal relationships are personal relationship. I can't turn a blind eye because of personal relationship. Discipline isn't just for the soldiers. We also need to be disciplined. And I'm sure that Instructor Yi doesn't need too much help. The female soldiers will obey her orders. Even if you need my help, it should only be a matter of increasing the difficulty of the training. Xia Jinyuan had confidence in Yi Qian. Seeing how certain he was, Commander Zhu's eyes flashed and he asked casually, "Have you and Instructor Yi known each other for a long time?" "Yes, the elders know each other." Hearing this, Company Commander Zhu was enlightened. That almost led him astray. Xia Jinyuan didn't want to talk about his private relationship with Yi Qian. He also knew that Company Commander Zhu wasn't as straightforward and reckless as he appeared to be. So he changed the topic to the camp and asked when the battalion commander would return. Company Commander Zhu replied, "Around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. He'll definitely talk to you when he returns. Don't worry. He looks like Mr. Bao. He's a good person." They stopped paying attention to Yi Qian and naturally talked about Battalion Commander Tian. Jane, who had walked from the last female soldier to the front of the line, turned around and looked coldly at the female soldiers, who were as tall and straight as the male soldiers. His line of sight swept across the female soldiers' solemn faces. Their beautiful faces, which would always amaze people, had a very faint smile on them. It was like a colorful flower wrapped in a sparkling and translucent ice crystal in the vast expanse of snow, instantly attracting people's attention. Chapter 48-62. The few female soldiers standing at the front could clearly see Yi Qian's face and couldn't help but gasp. This captain's face was too beautiful. Her eyebrows were like a painting. No, even a painting couldn't draw out such beautiful colors. Didn't they say that the sun in the northwest was high and the ultraviolet rays were so strong that their skin color was dark? Why was this captain, who was so beautiful that even the women were stunned, fair and tender? Under the sunlight, they felt as if there was a layer of translucent white porcelain on her skin. This was too illogical. Could it be that she had just arrived like them? That couldn't be right. Looking at her behavior, it didn't seem like she had just arrived. Yi Qian, who was standing at the front, hadn't opened her mouth yet, but the female soldiers below kept making guesses. She didn't introduce herself either. Next was Xia Jinyuan's selection, so she couldn't steal the limelight. The female soldiers faintly looked at her. Yi Jianjian looked back at them directly. Her eyes were sharp and cold, with a hint of warning. It wasn't a warning because she was looking at her, but because Political Commissar Tang was talking and the female soldiers in line were distracted. Gao Xiao, who was caught red-handed by her, was caught off guard. Her heart trembled violently when her gaze swept over. She instantly became obedient and didn't dare to be distracted again. When she became obedient, she muttered in her heart even more uncomfortably. She wanted to know who the captain with the scary gaze was. Among the female soldiers, there were 2 second lieutenants and 1 first lieutenant. The first lieutenant held the position of deputy platoon leader in the original army. The 2 second lieutenants were outstanding soldiers who had been promoted and graduated this year. The 3 of them had more seniority, so they were the 3 most afraid of Yi Qian's identity among the 20 female soldiers. They were female soldiers, and the captain standing in front of them was also a female soldier. It was very likely that she was the instructor in charge of training. As this thought flashed through their minds, the 3 of them looked forward and didn't dare to look at Yi Qian. After Yi Qian caught 3 female soldiers in a row, she calmly retracted her gaze. The 3 female soldiers who were caught by her still had a lingering fear in their hearts. They did not expect that they would be caught by the captain just by sneaking a few glances. It was so fast that they did not even have time to withdraw their gazes. As a result, no one dared to use the rest of their lives to size up Yi Qian. In addition, Yi Qian had been standing in front of the formation all this time. The female soldiers could vaguely guess what was going on, so they did not dare to act rashly. Yi Qian, who had his back facing them, could naturally feel that no one was looking at her. His clear black eyes calmly stared at Political Commissar Tang, who was speaking in front of him. Even if Xia Jinyuan was also standing in front of him, Yi Qian did not spare any of his attention. The selection of the 20 male soldiers began very quickly. After Political Commissar Tang finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan, who was the instructor, stood at the front. His appearance was like a white pearl emerging from a group of black pearls. Once again, the female soldiers were amazed. This lieutenant colonel also had fair and elegant skin. It was impossible to tell that he was a soldier from the northwest. When he wore a military uniform, he exuded military might. When he took off the military uniform, he exuded an air of nobility. He was so handsome that his facial features were flawless. Seeing this, Gao Shao sneered and glanced at Qiu Tong, who was standing on her left. She did not know if this lieutenant colonel had a girlfriend. It did not matter if he had a girlfriend or not. If he was targeted by a woman like Qiu Tong, even if he had a girlfriend, she would pester him until he broke up with her. She was a living example of that. Glancing at Qiu Tong from the corner of her eyes, Gao Shao almost sneered when she saw that Qiu Tong's expression was serious. Pretend. Let's see how long she can pretend. Qiu Tong knew that Gao Shao was coldly staring at her from her right. She frowned and moved her lips. Do you want to die? Chapter 4863. F***ck off. Gao Shao replied. She didn't dare to be distracted. The rest of the female soldiers remained motionless as they stared at the instructor in front of them. Only the 8 female soldiers in front of them could clearly see what the instructor looked like. The rest of the female soldiers could only hear his voice but not see him. The capable male soldiers in the 3 companies, who were interested in competing for the 20 spots, had already walked to the front of the line. There were a total of 46 of them, and they were all the most capable male soldiers in the company. 9 of them were the male soldiers who challenged Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian in the morning and lost in the end. If nothing unexpected happened, the 9 of them would definitely be selected. Xia Jinyuan had sparred with 5 of them and was quite satisfied with their physical fitness. Yi Qian was also quite satisfied with the physical fitness of the other 4 male soldiers and believed that they had a high chance of becoming one of the 20 elite soldiers. However, Xia Jinyuan's selection had strict requirements. He didn't just want to be good at combat, he also wanted to pass the overall physical fitness test. Therefore, his selection was equivalent to a martial arts competition. Other than the obstacle course, there were also other competitions. Company Commander Zhu said to Political Commissar Tang in private, "The people from the Special Forces are indeed different. If he stays for a few more years, the overall standard of our battalion will definitely be raised by a few levels." Political Commissar Tang laughed at Company Commander Zhu's greed. Captain Xia's arrival was very sudden. The regiment didn't even receive any news. By the time they found out, she had already confirmed that she would be joining the Pioneer Battalion. This was even more sudden than the establishment of a female combat team in the Northwest. The establishment of a female combat team was necessary and also a trend. Captain Xia's arrival was said to be a training ground for the Pioneer Battalion, but it felt like there was something else behind it. As for the hidden reason, they had guessed and pondered over it, but they couldn't figure it out. The 46 male soldiers walked out of the line. Suddenly, Company Commander Zhu opened his mouth and said, "Instructor Yi, do you want to compete with your female squad?" His question was very sudden, and Political Commissar Tang was stunned for a moment. Political Commissar Tang reacted quickly and said, "Company Commander Zhu was defeated this morning. Why? Are you looking for trouble now?" Yi Qian didn't answer immediately. He turned to face the female soldiers and glanced at them with a smile. "Let me introduce myself. I'm your instructor, Yi Qian. It's a pleasure to meet all of you." When her identity was revealed, the female soldiers were more or less surprised. It really was their instructor. She was young and beautiful and looked average. "It's your first day in the camp, and you haven't even familiarized yourself with the environment. Do you have the confidence to compete with the male soldiers? If there is, I will accept the challenge immediately. One person cannot represent the entire female troop. I will only accept the challenge if everyone agrees. Do you agree?" Influenced by Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian's aura didn't diminish even when he smiled. She left the question of whether to accept or not to accept the challenge to the female soldiers themselves. The female soldiers looked at the male soldiers who stood out in front of them and wanted to open their mouths to accept the challenge. However, the main point was, their instructor required everyone to accept the challenge before she would accept it. "I'll count to 1, 2, 3. Answer me on the count of 3. Yi Qian glanced at the female soldiers one by one. As soon as she said 3, 21 voices rang out in unison. Yes. Although their voices weren't as loud as the male soldiers, they were equally sonorous and full of fighting spirit. Yi Qian smiled at Company Commander Zhu and said, "Company Commander Zhu, we have accepted the challenge." Company Commander Zhu laughed and said, "Women are not inferior to men. Instructor Yi, your soldiers are very confident." He waved his hand and asked the male soldiers in a deep voice, "What about you? Are you confident?" Chapter 48-64. Yes, yes, yes. His voice was as loud as the morning bell and resounded throughout the training ground. Good. Company Commander Zhu was very satisfied with the male soldiers' morale. At this moment, the more morale his soldiers had, the happier he was as a company commander. At a time like this, he couldn't give in to the female soldiers just because they were female. Sparring during training was also a form of combat. How could he give in? Company Commander Zhu, who had suffered because of Yi Qian, completely stopped looking down on the female soldiers. He didn't dare to instruct the male soldiers to be careful like he did in the morning. The male soldiers were aggressive, but the female soldiers didn't have any stage fright. Yi Qian said to the female soldiers, "Show them what we're made of. Let them know how powerful we are." Just as he finished speaking, a female soldier asked, "Instructor Yi, what about you? Are you going to compete with the male soldiers as well? I hope you can lead us so we can get to know each other better." After she finished speaking, Yi Qianjian saw several female soldiers nodding their heads lightly to show their agreement. Since he needed to establish his dominance, he naturally couldn't miss this opportunity. He nodded and said calmly, "Of course. I need to understand you, and you need to understand me. After you understand each other, each of you will have the right mentality to face the upcoming training." The chilling voice was like an invisible wall that pressed against the 20 female soldiers. The majestic military might that it carried caused the 20 female soldiers to feel a chill in their hearts. Even the expressions on their faces became much more restrained. "Let me remind you that I only like to win. I don't like to lose. In the army there is no second place, only first place. Do you understand? The female soldiers straightened their backs and held their heads high, and replied in unison, "Understood." The male soldiers were instantly delighted. The soldiers of the 3 companies in the barracks often fought with each other. Even if it was a tug-of-war, the winner would be decided. The battalion commander would scold the company commander scolded the deputy company commander, the deputy company commander scolded the platoon leader scolded the squad leader, and the squad leader scolded the soldiers. If they lost to the female soldiers today, they wouldn't just be scolded, they would be beaten up. They would be so ashamed that they would beat themselves up even if others didn't do anything. When Company Commander Zhu saw that the female soldiers were united and full of confidence, he said to Xia Jinyuan, "Captain Xia, our male soldiers are going to lose. You don't have to be courteous, just teach them a lesson. Teach him a lesson." Losing to a female soldier, the battalion commander was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. Xia Jinyuan thought for a while and answered uncertainly, "The female soldiers have been selected and their overall military quality is very strong. The male soldiers are doubtful if they can get any benefits from them. It's a 50-50 split." Hearing this, Company Commander Zhu's heart skipped a beat. "No way. You have so little confidence in the men in our battalion? Captain Xia, the 10 of us did lose to you and Instructor Yi this morning, but our situation is different. You and Instructor Yi are from the Special Forces. One of you is worth 5 of us. It's not that I don't have confidence, but I haven't seen the strength of the female soldiers. How can I be sure? What if there's another female soldier who is similar to Instructor Yi?" Xia Jinyuan pointed in the direction of the female soldiers. His handsome face became slightly restrained and his expression became slightly more serious. "You heard the female soldiers' answers just now. They didn't lose confidence because they were compared to the male soldiers. It's obvious that they were also famous in their original unit. Otherwise, how could they answer with such confidence?" Company Commander Zhu was silent for a while and said in a deep voice, "I have confidence in the soldiers in our battalion." Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, "I also have confidence that the male soldiers can win. Instructor Yi also has confidence that the female soldiers can win. We just have to see who wins and who loses." Chapter 4865. Male soldiers competing with male soldiers was enough to make their blood boil. Now that there was another male soldier competing with female soldiers, their fighting spirit was completely ignited. Everyone fought with their lives on the line. Before Battalion Commander Tian could get out of the car when he arrived at the camp, he heard a roar that shook the ground from the direction of the training ground. The car stopped and Battalion Commander Tian jumped out quickly. He slammed the car door shut and called for the sentinel to question him. At 5 in the afternoon, the sentinel changed shift. He knew everything that happened at the training ground. He raised his gun and tried his best to control his excited expression. He reported everything in detail. Battalion Commander Tian was dumbfounded. Instructor Yi of the female soldier class defeated Company Commander Zhu in the morning and then defeated 4 male soldiers in a row. Battalion Commander Tian couldn't help but cover his face when he heard this. He was flustered. He also heard that the new instructor Xia in the afternoon was going to select 20 male soldiers for key training. Since the female soldiers were also there, 3rd Company Commander Zhu suggested that they might as well compete with the female soldiers. In the end, Battalion Commander Tian's chest hurt even more when he heard this. The 2 second lieutenants and 1 first lieutenant under Instructor Yi were very powerful. They took down the male soldiers as soon as they went on stage. As for Instructor Yi, who also went through the obstacles with them, it was needless to say. All the obstacles were like flat ground to her. The sentinel was very honest. He answered whatever Battalion Commander Tian asked and answered in detail. He told Battalion Commander Tian the ins and outs of everything. When he talked about how Yi Qian, who was the first to go on stage, beat up all the male soldiers, the sentinel's eyes lit up. Battalion Commander Tian felt so stifled that he wanted to slap the sentinel's head. Which company did he come from? How could he be so blind? He must be from Zhugan Gang Company. Like company commander, like soldier. Didn't he see that he was so stifled that he was about to have a heart attack? He even kept talking about how powerful the female soldiers were and how powerful Yi Qian was. He only knew how to boost the morale of others and destroy his own prestige. After all the sentinels were selected, Battalion Commander Tian was still excited when he recalled the scene. At that time, the field was very enthusiastic. The male soldiers clapped their hands until they were red. As for the female soldiers, they were shouting, "Instructor Yi, defeat them! Instructor Yi, take them down!" The male soldiers usually shouted, "Kill him, kill him!" But when the female soldiers suddenly shouted, "Kill them all!" the group of men inexplicably blushed. As for Yi Qian and her female soldiers, they were about to leave and did not notice anything amiss. Hearing this, Battalion Commander Tian's cheeks twitched. He ground his teeth so hard that they were like kitchen knives. The words he spat out were filled with murderous intent. "Zhu Gang, if I don't peel off a layer of your skin, my surname is not Tian." The sentries' reports were all, "Company Commander Zhu said it, Company Commander Zhu suggested it, Company Commander Zhu said 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 it." Not only did he lose, he even dragged the soldiers down with him. "It's fine if you drag me down, but at least win for me. Win. Win." In the end, he lost. Battalion Commander Tian, who was about to explode on the spot, put his hands on his hips and panted heavily. He paced back and forth a few times, then raised a hand and pointed sideways at the training field. He said to Company Commander Sun, who was beside him, who was also dumbfounded by what he heard and was about to die from anger, Go, get Zhu Gang over here. Aren't you ashamed? Aren't you ashamed? He still has the face to continue staying on the field? Go, get him over here." Chapter 4866. The sentinel blinked and realized why the battalion commander was angry. Afraid of implicating Company Commander Zhu, he quickly explained, "Instructor Yi is from the Special Forces. The new instructor, Instructor Xia, said that all the soldiers in the Special Forces have been defeated by her. She can even take down 3 Special Forces soldiers. Marksmanship, no Special Forces soldier in the Special Forces can beat her. She's a sharpshooter and all the guns come alive in her hands. She can hit anywhere she looks. If you go over now, you should still be able to make it in time for the vertical shooting competition between the female and male soldiers. It's not over yet. Instructor Yi probably hasn't gone up yet." Battalion Commander Tian didn't know much about Yi Qian's background. He only knew that the military had sent someone who had just graduated from a military academy. He had 3 third-class merits and 2 second-class merit. He was directly promoted to the rank of captain upon graduation and didn't even need to go through an internship. He was definitely capable, but he didn't expect him to be from the Special Forces. Battalion Commander Tian, who had just returned to camp, was full of questions. Didn't he just graduate? How did he become a Special Forces soldier? Even though he was from the Special Forces, he could still take down the male soldiers in the Special Forces. It was no wonder that Zhu Gang lost to her. Battalion Commander Tian's expression finally improved. He didn't want to stay any longer. Afraid that he wouldn't be able to make it in time, he quickly jumped into the car and shouted for Company Commander Sun to get in as well. After getting into the car, Battalion Commander Tian slapped his thigh. He was so angry that he forgot that Instructor Yi from the female soldier class was his niece, whom he had rushed back to see. "Drive faster! Battalion Commander Tian ordered the driver to speed up. He couldn't wait any longer and was even more anxious to see Yi Qian. At this moment, the 20 selected male soldiers had all finished their vertical shooting. They released the safety ropes on their bodies, tightened and loosened them. The last male soldier who had finished shooting stood beside Xia Jinyuan. Reporting, "We've completed the vertical shooting." Xia Jinyuan looked at the stopwatch. The 20 male soldiers had taken 16 minutes to complete the vertical shooting, which meant that on average, each soldier had finished shooting in less than a minute. Their results weren't very good, but they were not bad. Seeing that the female soldiers were ready, Xia Jinyuan went up against Yi Qian, who was still standing beside him with a stopwatch, and said with a smile, 16 minutes. Not bad. Do you feel any pressure? 16 minutes and 9 seconds. Even if we beat you by 1 second, it's still a victory. Yi Qian would not admit defeat. The female soldiers had won and lost some in the previous matches, which made her more confident in the 20 female soldiers. Xia Jinyuan liked Yi Qian's stubbornness and found it particularly interesting every time he looked at him. "Sure, I'll wait for you to knock me down." After saying that, Xia Jinyuan seemed to have thought of something. He lowered his voice and said, "In the future, just say kill, don't say kill. It will cause misunderstandings." Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? Yi Qian looked at him in confusion. Xia Jinyuan cleared his throat and said a few more words in a low voice. Yi Qian's face suddenly turned red. He glared at Xia Jinyuan fiercely, then moved his feet to put some distance between them. Hooligan! Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who had been called a hooligan by Yi Qian, felt helpless. He had kindly reminded him. How did he become a hooligan? His words were crude, but his reasoning was not. Ready. After a series of whistles, Yi Jian raised her head and looked up without blinking. She gave a thumbs up to the female soldier, who was the first to shoot from the vertical descent. When the female soldiers who were ready saw this, they calmly gave their instructor a thumbs up. Chapter 4867. Begin. The vice company commander put down his hand. The female soldier who was ready pulled the rope and fastened the safety buckle. She faced the wall with her back facing the outside. She bent her hips slightly and kicked her feet. Her whole body began to slide down rapidly. Since it was a vertical descent, there must be shooting during the slide. Moreover, the number of targets that appeared would be different. The first round of shooting might be from the 5th floor. The next round might be from the 4th floor. The first round of shooting might be from the 5th floor. The next round might be from the 4th floor. This depended on the individual's reaction and agility. Bang! 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 The female soldier with the pistol shot the target during the slide. After she landed, Yi Qian looked at the time. Fortunately, it was less than a minute. The male soldiers who were watching from below held their breath. The female soldiers were indeed very strong. Company Commander Zhu took off his uniform for training. He habitually raised his hand from his forehead to the back of his head. The selected female soldiers were indeed different. They had completely changed his view of them. The female soldiers were not only good at answering phone calls and doing paperwork. When the female soldiers were good, even the male soldiers were embarrassed. The first female soldier came down, followed by the second, the third, the fourth. Although there were some female soldiers who were delayed by shooting, overall it was very smooth. There were no mistakes. When Battalion Commander Tian arrived, no one noticed him. He watched the female soldiers descend from the sky one by one and shoot nimbly. Most of the anger in Battalion Commander Tian's heart dissipated. Political Commissar Tang, who brought him over, smiled and said, "How is it? Are you satisfied? If Zhu Gangang did not ask the female soldiers to compete, I would not have known that they were so good. When Instructor Yi leaves, they will definitely be able to shoulder the heavy responsibility." "You mean Zhu Zhonghua did it on purpose?" Battalion Commander Tian asked without looking away. Why do I feel like he is the one who did it? Zhu Zhonghua was the real name of Company Commander Zhu Ganggang. He did it on purpose. He wanted to know the strength of the female soldiers in advance. After all, these female soldiers are now soldiers in his company. As a company commander, how can he not know? Zhu Zhonghua looked reckless, but in fact, he had a scale in his heart. Sometimes, when he was trying to trick people, he would look stupid. If one was not careful, they would fall into his trap. However, the new Lieutenant Colonel Xiao was also a shrewd person. No matter how Zhu Zhonghua tried to coax him, he didn't fall for it. He was so proficient in Tai Chi that Zhu Zhonghua didn't know where to start. The anger in Battalion Commander Tian's heart completely dissipated. He narrowed his eyes and said slowly, Zhu Zhonggua's little calculation is good. Once the female instructor leaves, he can immediately take over as the company commander based on his understanding of the female soldiers. There is no need for a transition period. You suggested it because Zhu Zhonghua was the most suitable of the three companies, right? Political Commissar Tang smiled. If he wasn't suitable, as the battalion commander, you wouldn't agree, right? You ask, I ask too. The two old partners just smile at each other. It's fine as long as everyone understands. Who is Instructor Yi? Show me. Now that Battalion Commander Tian had calmed down, he was more at ease with the female soldiers being placed in Company Commander Zhu's camp. Now, he had a lot of free time. All he could see was a back view. He couldn't tell who his good friend's biological daughter was. Political Commissar Tang told his old partner, the one with Zhu Zhonghua is Lieutenant Colonel Xia. 1 meter away is Captain Yi. Both of them are very young. In the morning, the two of them beat up 10 soldiers in our camp, including Zhu Zhonghua. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Chapter 48-68. Will she go up? Battalion Commander Tian asked again. I'd like to see the skills of a female Special Forces soldier. He also wanted to see how good his good friend's biological daughter was and whether she took after her father. Of course she'll go up. She's a new instructor. The soldiers under her are so strong. As an instructor, if she doesn't show off her skills, how can the female soldiers obey her? Yes, that's how it should be. She'll be here soon. There are only 3 female soldiers in front. There were still 3 female soldiers who hadn't finished yet. Battalion Commander Tian was already staring at them without blinking. He didn't even have to blink a lot. Xia Jinyuan walked over to Yi Qian, who was standing aside after calling him a hooligan with his eyes. He said in a low voice, Company Commander, Zhu reminded me that Battalion Commander Tian is watching from behind. Don't look back. Company Commander Zhu said that Battalion Commander Tian likes to observe from the dark. Just do the same. Let him watch. Yi Qian glanced at him. You might as well not tell me. I won't feel burdened. Xia Jinyuan revealed a meaningful smile. Can't you tell that I did it on purpose? Yi Qian snorted softly. Of course she could tell. Other people's boyfriends would try their best to protect their girlfriends, but as for her boyfriend, he would try his best to let her protect herself. Her job was special. She couldn't hide under his wings and be protected. Xia Jinyuan smiled again. This time, his eyes were full of tenderness. Yi Qian quickly looked away. Her ears turned red. Mind your image. Don't stare at me. No one saw. Xia Jinyuan chuckled. Seeing that his girlfriend's ears were red and her skin was so delicate that it was almost transparent, he curled his fingers and felt a little itchy. It was better to stay away. Only then could he control himself. 14 minutes and 19 seconds. Instructor Yi, are you sure you can beat us? Xia Jinyuan took 2 steps back and said with a smile. He was a little hesitant, but more than that, he was provoking her. Other people's boyfriends coaxed their girlfriends, but Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was also a boyfriend, had a unique structure. His brain was unparalleled in the world, and he specialized in going against his girlfriend. As his girlfriend, Yi Qian had her own personality. She didn't distance herself from him because of this. Instead, she became more courageous with every setback. No matter how he provoked her, she would return the favor. The two of them got along with each other and broke through the inherent intimacy and love between them as they climbed to the peak hand in hand. "Just wait and see, Captain Xia." After he finished speaking, Yi Qian stuffed the stopwatch in his hand into his hand. Together with the last female soldier, he climbed up the single vertical staircase that was exposed on the wall. Hand ladders are vertical and a single U-shaped ladder. Climbing while holding on tightly, or those who are afraid of heights will feel their legs go soft just by looking at it. The trained soldiers not only had to climb up barehanded, but they also had to be fast enough. The female soldiers were the same. The female soldier in front of Yi Qian was a first lieutenant who had been promoted to the rank of outstanding soldier, Sister Xiang. She had a fearless spirit, she said. "Drill master, I'll do my best to climb as fast as I can." When Yi Qian saw this, he was happy and followed closely behind. Halfway up, the first lieutenant turned her head to look and saw that their drill master was just below her feet. A faint smile appeared on her tightly pursed lips, and she moved even faster. As she climbed, she told Yi Qian, "I'm from Xiang province. My hometown is full of mountains and trees. When I was young, I loved to climb trees the most. I could even climb a 10-meter-tall tree. My parents laughed at me for being a monkey." She was very relaxed. Yi Qian felt even more relieved. The male soldiers took 16 minutes and 9 seconds. The female soldiers took 14 minutes and 19 seconds before I set off. "Yang, whether or not we can beat the male soldiers will depend on you and me." Yang Zhen, a first lieutenant, used to be a paratrooper in the army. However, she had never been assigned a real parachute jump before, so she entered the Northwest. Chapter 4869. She remembered what Yi Jin said. After she climbed up, she would descend at the fastest speed. She was the fastest female soldier among the first 19 female soldiers. When she started to descend, everyone, including Xia Jinyuan, had their eyes lit up. She was fast and steady, and her shooting speed was also very fast. She was obviously better than the first 19 female soldiers. Yi Qian's eyes were brighter than anyone else's. She was so agile and fast. Female soldiers who had been selected were indeed different. No wonder Commander-in-Chief Xia said there would be a surprise waiting for her ahead. Of course there was a surprise. Yang Zhen, who had finished descending, knelt down on one knee to reel in the rope. Battalion Commander Tian cheered. Company Commander Zhu seemed to have just realized that his battalion commander had returned. He pretended to jump and widened his eyes. "Battalion Commander, when did you come back? Why was there no sound at all? I was scared out of my wits when you suddenly spoke." Battalion Commander Tian couldn't be more fake. "You were too busy. I didn't want to disturb you. Was your soul scared out of your wits? Do you want me to invite a dancing god to collect your soul?" "Battalion Commander, I'm a materialist. Stop spreading superstitions. If the political commissar hears you, he'll nag at you again." Battalion Commander Tian sneered. "Ha, then I should thank you for your reminder. Don't mention it. You're the battalion commander. It's my duty." Company Commander Zhu chuckled. "Stop pretending." Battalion Commander Tian kicked him. "If you keep pretending, I'll send you back to your hometown." "It's been 15 minutes and 47 seconds, Political Commissar Tang said. The battalion commander and company commander immediately stopped arguing. Yi Qian only had 21 seconds left. 21 seconds. Company Commander Zhu clenched his fist. Could it be done? Could it be done? Battalion Commander Tian and Political Commissar Tang were also watching closely. 21 seconds, could it really be done? Even the fastest soldier in the battalion needed 38 seconds to complete the descent. If there was no shooting, it could be done in 20 seconds. Xia Jinyuan glanced at the timer and the color in his dark eyes deepened. There were still 21 seconds left. Come on, Qing Niao, you can do it. This was the most crucial jump, and the surrounding soldiers did not dare to disturb him. Yang Zhen silently gave him a few thumbs up. The female soldiers were even more nervous. They all raised their heads and stared at their instructor. Yi Qian fastened the safety lock, took a deep breath, and kicked off with her slender and straight legs. Below her, there was only a dumbfounded look and an endless stream of F***ck, 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 F***ck. He held a loaded pistol in one hand and pulled the rope with the other. His speed was like a freefall. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. He then opened fire. When she was descending, he could only see her shadow. Only when she stopped and fired would he be able to see her real body. There were a total of 4 shots. Based on the 3 seconds shooting time, it would take 12 seconds. Including the descending time, no matter what, it would take more than 20 seconds. Everyone was worried about Yi Qian's fast speed and worried that she would fall directly. Only Xia Jinyuan's handsome face was calm. There was even a faint smile on his thin lips. They were worried that Yi Qian would fall because she was too eager to succeed. In Xia Jinyuan's eyes, he saw his comrade Qing Niao's fearless figure. She could do it. He always knew that she could do it. With unlimited potential, she could definitely do it. Swoosh. Yi Qian's shadow fell rapidly until it suddenly stopped. Her figure finally materialized. She landed firmly on the ground and handsomely retracted her pistol. Then, she knelt on one knee and closed the rope. Xia Jinyuan and Political Commissar Tang pressed the stopwatch at the same time. The female soldiers took 16 minutes and 7 seconds. Chapter 4870. It was so quiet that Yi Qian, who was about to get up and leave, froze in place. He glanced at the silent soldiers who were staring at him, then looked at Xia Jinyuan who had been standing in place. He blinked. It was so quiet that it was scary. She needed Captain Xia's help. Xia Jinyuan looked over with a smile. This time, he didn't speak immediately. He just looked over with a smile and his eyes were full of pride. He was proud of her wonderful performance. The dusty pearl had begun to bloom. The hardships along the way had turned into achievements that could make her shine. After putting in so much effort, it was finally time for her to bloom. He always knew that his girl would shine. Now, wherever she was, there would be a legend. I'm proud of you. Xia Jinyuan's thin lips moved slightly across the crowd. Yi Qian didn't hear his voice, but he understood from his lips. His eyes curved into a smile, like a bright new moon that had parted the clouds. The smile in Xia Jinyuan's eyes deepened. The two of them interacted silently. On the other side, Political Commissar Tang stared at the stopwatch with his eyes wide open. He shook the stopwatch in his hand in disbelief. This thing isn't broken, right? 16 minutes and 7 seconds. The female soldier took a total of 16 minutes and 7 seconds. 2 seconds faster than the male soldier. When did Yi Qian jump? 15 minutes and 51 seconds. In other words, she took a total of 16 seconds to shoot from high altitude. 16 seconds to shoot from high altitude and land from high altitude. How was that possible? The excited battalion commander Tian didn't notice Political Commissar Tang's strange behavior. He couldn't wait to ask, how was it? Did she win or lose? How long did she take? Did you remember? He asked a series of questions, then realized that Political Commissar Tang didn't hear him at all. He was holding the stopwatch in a daze like a wooden man. What's wrong? Battalion Commander Tian couldn't hide his excitement. He reached out and took the stopwatch. Political Commissar Tang came back to his senses and handed the stopwatch over. The stopwatch showed 16 minutes and 7 seconds. Battalion Commander Tian stared at it for a few seconds, then slowly asked the political commissar, "The female soldier won. The male soldier lost." At this time, there was no need to confirm that the female soldier had won. Yes, the female soldier won. Instructor Yi used all his strength to stop the tide and used 16 seconds to complete the aerial shooting and landing. My battalion's soldiers were the fastest. 38 seconds. Political Commissar Tang was so shocked that he had to swallow his saliva before opening his mouth. Completed in 16 seconds. Old Tian, you and I didn't see wrongly. He was a full 22 seconds faster than the soldiers in my battalion. It's more than double. Battalion Commander Tian's eyes widened in disbelief. Who else is keeping track of time? Show me the stopwatch. He knew that she was fast. He could tell from the speed of her descent that she was fast. He could not believe that she was so fast. Yes, the new instructor, Captain Xia. He has a timer, and Zhu Zhonghua is beside him. Political Commissar Tang did not believe it either. He simply strode forward with Battalion Commander Tian. When Company Commander Zhu heard the number that Xia Jinyuan whispered to him, he exclaimed in shock, "What?" Then, his eyes widened as he took the stopwatch from Xia Jinyuan's hand. When he looked at it, his hands trembled. It's really 16 minutes and 7 seconds, 2 seconds faster than the male soldiers. The first 18 female soldiers completed the aerial shooting and landed. It was obvious that there was not enough time. In the end, the first lieutenant from the army's paratroopers appeared and shortened the time. Then, Instructor Yi appeared, and it was even more amazing. She turned the male soldier's situation from a sure win to a loss. Company Commander Zhu, whose eyes were wide open, asked in a low voice, "Brother, is the watch broken?" Chapter 48-71. 16 minutes and 7 seconds. She beat the male soldiers by 2 seconds. She turned the male soldiers' victory into a loss. Company Commander Zhu really couldn't accept it for a while. "It's not bad, I'm sure." Xia Jinyuan smiled. "The applause is enough to show how outstanding she is." Thunderous applause sounded. The soldiers who lost and the onlookers were all applauding the female soldiers' performance. Xia Jinyuan continued to attack Company Commander Zhu. Instructor Yi took 16 seconds, the shortest among all the soldiers. Also, I'm sure her shooting accuracy is 100%. Company Commander Zhu's strong body swayed and his blood pressure soared. The fastest time my battalion took to finish shooting was 38 seconds. So? Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and didn't say anything. So? Company Commander Zhu, who was still staring, raised his hand and slapped his forehead. My brain must have been damaged today. As he spoke, he suddenly saw Political Commissar Tang and Battalion Commander Tian striding over from the corner of his eyes. Company Commander Zhu gulped several times. Things were going to get out of hand. He just wanted to know the details of the female soldiers and the female military instructor, Instructor Yi. Who knew that he would end up stroking the tiger's whiskers and lose face? Battalion Commander Tian's face was a little distorted. Looking at his happy and angry expression, Company Commander Zhu really wanted to run away. He was worried that he would be beaten up by the battalion commander. The female soldiers, who were still in shock, heard the applause. They came back to their senses and applauded excitedly. Instructor Yi looks young, but I didn't expect her to be so good. She can do everything and crush everyone in every class. She's amazing. She's even better than the instructors in my previous unit. The better someone is, the stricter the requirements they have for themselves. I'm happy, but at the same time, I'm prepared to suffer in the coming days. I'm not afraid. I was already prepared to suffer when I learned that I was going to be transferred to the Northwest. My old regiment commander told me that we have a high chance of becoming the first female Special Forces unit. The stricter the instructor, the better for us. We can learn real skills. Now all my worries are gone. What were you worried about? Hee, nothing. So did we win or lose? You haven't reported the time yet? I suspect that it took about the same amount of time, mainly because Yang Zhen and Instructor Yi shortened the time in the end. I didn't expect Yang Zhen to be so powerful. First Lieutenant Yang Zhen used to be a paratrooper. These subjects aren't difficult for her. A few female soldiers who were in tune with each other and had gotten to know each other after a day and a night clapped and chatted secretly. They looked at Yi Jian with bright eyes that seemed to be shining. Although the female soldier Gao Xiao was clapping her hands, she glanced at Qiu Tong from time to time. When she saw Qiu Tong clapping her hands vigorously, she sneered. She only knows how to pretend. Let's see how long she can pretend for. She didn't believe that no one in the army would be able to discover her hypocritical side. Amidst the applause, Yi Qian, who did not see Battalion Commander Tian at first glance, returned to the female troop. The female soldiers who were clapping consciously put down their hands and regrouped as quickly as possible. Training had yet to begin, but Yi Qian's abilities were enough to make them stop underestimating him and become wary of him. The first step to establishing authority was to let the subordinates know how powerful their superiors were. Only then would they be fearful. As long as the first step was successful, the following steps would be much smoother. The female soldiers stopped clapping, and so did the male soldiers. However, the result of which side won was still unknown. They were still cheering and shocked by the female soldiers' performance. Chapter 48-72. At the final critical moment, Yang Zhen's rapid descent and nimble shooting made everyone's eyes light up. On the other hand, Instructor Yi Qian's appearance shocked everyone. Yang Zhen was a paratrooper, and descending from high altitudes was one of their training exercises. Although she had never officially paratrooped before, she had a solid foundation and could complete it very well. Yi Qian, on the other hand, was different. She excelled in all the subjects. As long as she appeared, she would definitely beat everyone. Her performance was spectacular and shocking. Seeing Battalion Commander Tian and Political Commissar Tang approaching, Xia Jinyuan raised his stopwatch and prepared to announce the final result. He was the only one present who could remain calm. Battalion Commander Tian quickly asked for confirmation. How long did it take? Reporting, it took 16 minutes and 7 seconds. The female soldier wins, Company Commander Zhu answered. Although they lost, they couldn't lose to the point of being scared. They had to be confident. Political Commissar Tang nodded. That's right. How long did Instructor Yi take? Battalion Commander Tian asked again. This time, it was Xia Jinyuan's turn to answer. Reporting, it took 16 seconds. It was true. Battalion Commander Tian glared at Company Commander Zhu, then smiled at Xia Jinyuan. Announce the result and let them know how big the gap is. Yes, sir. Facing the battalion commander, Xia Jinyuan, who was also a lieutenant colonel, did not treat himself as an equal. Instead, he placed himself in a position far lower than the battalion commander. Wherever he went, he had to follow the rules. There were rules in the military. Even if he was also a lieutenant colonel, he could not ride on the battalion commander's neck. No matter how big or small the taboo was, Xia Jinyuan would never commit it himself. Although Battalion Commander Tian did not think much of it, he smiled when he saw Xia Jinyuan, who had the same rank as him and had a very proper attitude. Old Tang was a good judge of character. He was not a troublemaker. He only knew how to do things. He liked it. Xia Jinyuan raised his stopwatch and announced the result to the male soldier's anticipation. The female soldier took 16 minutes and 7 seconds. The female soldier won, while Instructor Yi Qian took 16 seconds to complete the vertical shooting descent. When the result was announced, the male soldiers' expressions froze. When they heard Yi Qian's time, they were stunned again. 16 seconds. It only took 16 seconds to complete the vertical shooting descent. Xia Jinyuan smiled and asked the 20 selected male soldiers, "Did you not expect to lose?" The male soldiers' faces tightened as they lowered their heads. They lost? They actually lost? I really didn't think that I would lose. I thought that I would win, and win beautifully. Don't lower your head. It's a good thing that you lost today. Although it's embarrassing, it's a wake-up call for all of you. You'll know how to catch up in the upcoming training. Xia Jinyuan calmly accepted the outcome. The female soldiers were indeed very good, but the male soldiers were not bad. If it weren't for Yi Qian and Yang Zhen's performance at the end, they would have definitely taken more than 17 minutes. One was Yang Zhen, who specialized in paratroopers, and the other was a well-rounded female special forces soldier. It was no wonder that the male soldiers lost to the female soldiers in this subject. In addition, these female soldiers were outstanding in their original units, and the military was strict in removing those who wanted to come in and earn military merits. They only kept the female soldiers who were truly capable and did not lose to the male soldiers. It would be a joke if they lost in every subject. Xia Jinyuan knew where the problem was, so he could accept it. However, Company Commander's son found it hard to accept. He stood there expressionlessly. Although he did not say anything, his aura was terrifying. They lost again, they lost again. What face? It was all gone. Chapter 48-73. The expressions of the 3 deputy companies were not good either. The 20 male soldiers were all from the 3 companies and were the best in their respective companies. However, they were suppressed by the female soldiers. How could they maintain their dignity? Even Battalion Commander Tian would be embarrassed. Although Battalion Commander Tian was embarrassed, these female soldiers were his soldiers from the moment they entered the camp. That made him feel a little better. Moreover, losing once could make the soldiers reflect on themselves and strengthen their training in the future. Battalion Commander Tian also felt that although they lost this time, they had learned their lesson. It was more meaningful. Seeing the soldiers lower their heads, Battalion Commander Tian said in a deep voice, "Losing is not a bad thing. It will let you see your shortcomings. In the future, the female soldiers will be your role models. All the male soldiers will be included. Losing was not a bad thing, but there must be punishment." The 20 male soldiers quickly lined up. Battalion Commander Tian pointed outside the camp. "Run lightly for 5 kilometers. Company Commander, lead." The company commanders included Company Commander Zhu, Company Commander Sun, and the 3 deputy companies. Since the company commanders and deputy companies were running, how could the platoon leaders and squad leaders not dare to run? Company Commander Zhu took the lead. He would rather run for 5 kilometers than stay behind to face the battalion commander's storm. After running lightly for 5 kilometers, the battalion commander's anger dissipated a little. It would be much safer for him to show his face again. The male soldiers ran lightly for 5 kilometers while Yi Qian reorganized the female soldiers and let them rest for tomorrow morning's exercise. Taking advantage of this short time, Yi Qian directly made First Lieutenant Yang Zhen the squad leader and 2 second lieutenants the deputy squad leaders. The female soldiers disbanded and left the line. Yi Qian walked over to Battalion Commander Tian, who had been watching from the side. He stood still and saluted. Reporting to Battalion Commander. Female Instructor Yi Qian reporting for duty. Battalion Commander Tian immediately returned the salute and smiled in a very familiar manner. "No need to be so formal. Relax a little." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand. "I'm Pioneer Battalion Commander Tian Guizhi. I'll need you to take care of me in the future." As expected of his father. This was the first time they met, but he was shocked. When the shooting results came out, Battalion Commander Tian was once again shocked by the bullet holes on Yi Qian's target. He turned his head and said to Political Commissar Tang, "I should have shown them the target just now. That's enough of a blow. I'll leave it for next time. Political Commissar Tang sighed and said to Yi Qian, What should I do, Xiao Yi? I want to keep you in the barracks for a long time. Xia Jinyuan's heart skipped a beat. Yi Qian smiled and said, Political Commissar, you can only think about it. Don't do anything about it. It will put me under a lot of pressure. Battalion Commander Tian and Political Commissar Tang laughed heartily. With Yi Qian's previous performance, Battalion Commander Tian valued her from the bottom of his heart. He strongly expressed that he had great expectations for this female combat team. He hoped that under Yi Qian's leadership, the first female combat team, which was still in its embryonic stage and not yet fully established, could be trained into a strong combat team. This would lay the foundation for the future female special forces. Because there was only half a year's time, the training time was quite tight. Based on the expressions of the female soldiers in today's competition, Yi Qian worked through the night to come up with a more targeted training plan. He listed out everyone's strengths and weaknesses one by one. At around 2 o'clock in the morning, Yi Qian listed out the strengths and weaknesses of the 20 female soldiers. After formulating a targeted training plan, he carried the military portable issued by the military and knocked on Xia Jinyuan's bedroom door. Xia Jinyuan, who was stretching, heard the knock on the door. His handsome face, which was illuminated by the table lamp, revealed a faint smile. He glanced at the portable military portable that was still on. Xia Jinyuan picked up the glass of water beside him and stood up. Chapter 4874. When he opened the door, he looked down and saw Yi Qian holding a laptop in her hand. The smile in his eyes deepened. It seemed that she was doing the same work as him tonight. Yi Qian was surprised by the speed at which he opened the door. You're not asleep? Are you busy? I'm not asleep. I just came up with a training plan for the male soldiers. Xia Jinyuan turned sideways and invited her in. Yi Qian, who was wearing a short-sleeved shirt and shorts, did not notice that the man behind her was looking at her slender and straight legs. I came up with a training plan for the female soldiers. I would like you to take a look and see if there are any areas that need to be changed or if there are any areas that are inappropriate. Yi Jian, who was walking as she spoke, saw a portable phone on the desk that was still on. She smiled softly and turned her head to look at Xia Jinyuan. Are you also organizing the training of the male soldiers? Xia Jinyuan closed the door and locked it. He smiled and nodded. You only have half a year. You have to hurry. Seeing that the glass was empty and Yi Qian was only holding the laptop, Xia Jinyuan picked up the thermos in the corner and poured himself some water. Xia Jinyuan's eyes darkened a little when he saw her sitting on his single bed with the sound of water splashing. She was alone in a room in the middle of the night. His little fox was really defenseless. Next to the single bed was the desk. Yi Qian naturally chose to sit on the bed instead of the empty chair in front of the desk. If she needed to change the training plan later, she would definitely have to do it while sitting on the chair. Yi Qian thought to herself. He placed the steaming glass on the desk and pushed it in front of Yi Qian. Xia Jinyuan looked at Yi Qian tenderly. Did you encounter any difficulties or indecisiveness during the process? Did you have to change anything multiple times? He was standing and she was sitting. Yi Qian could only look up and answer, No, I observed their performance in the afternoon, and I had a plan in mind then. When I wrote it at night, I just sorted it out a little, and I didn't make any mistakes or make any changes. The range of the photo was limited, so she could only vaguely see his face. Even so, she could still feel that his face was blurry as he stared at her. His eyes were full of love for her. Yi Qian, who had come with the intention of asking for a favor, suddenly felt uneasy. His expression was no longer as casual as before, and he even seemed to be avoiding his gaze. Why did she feel like a lamb walking into a tiger's den? As soon as the strange feeling flashed across her heart, her chin was held up by a warm and strong hand. Yi Jian, who was already a little flustered, was so frightened that her body leaned back subconsciously. She forgot that she was sitting on the bed. Leaning back like this, her whole body seemed to naturally lie down on the bed. She realized that she had made a mistake in her actions, but before she could correct it, she heard a low and pleasant laughter that contained traces of affection. "You want to lie on my bed? Are you sure?" he asked with a low chuckle. Yi Qian instantly blushed. She replied anxiously, "What do you mean by lie on your bed? You scared me." "Scared? How?" The man who was standing was still holding her chin, his thumb gently stroking it. "You came to see me in the middle of the night just to ask about the training. You don't have any other intentions." Yi Qian stammered, "What other intentions could I have? Didn't you say that I could come to you anytime if I had any difficulties?" "Anytime doesn't include the middle of the night. You have to know that a man's body is most relaxed in the middle of the night. Once relaxed, especially an old virgin like me, I can't help but think about love. You picked the wrong time." Chapter 4875. Old. Child. Child. The thin-skinned Yi Qian wanted to laugh. Old child? Only he could say that out loud. Yi Qian had cultivated in front of him before, so he didn't panic this time. Instead, he sighed and said, "I did pick the wrong time, but I have to say that you didn't cherish the opportunity to end your old virginity. All you could do was wait for it." He was referring to the last great opportunity to end his old virginity, which was ruined by Xia Jinyuan himself. Xia Jinyuan also thought of it. His handsome face stiffened slightly. It was rare for him to be at a loss for words. After a few seconds of silence, he said, "Let bygones be bygones. There's no need to mention it again. We should cherish the present." Last time, he was completely unprepared. It wasn't that he didn't cherish it. Yi Qian relaxed at the mention of the embarrassing past. The flirtatious feeling that made them lose control of their rationality instantly disappeared when the embarrassing past was brought up again. Yi Qian pointed at the bag he brought over and raised his eyebrows. "I didn't pick the right time tonight. I'll be more careful in the future. Let's take a look at my plan first. With you in charge, I'll feel more at ease." Xia Jinyuan's heart ached. His reputation was ruined just like that. He sat back in his chair and didn't look at her bag immediately. Instead, he faced Yi Qian and said seriously, "You have to forget about that incident. Don't mention it again. I'm afraid that if you mention it too much, it will cause me to have hidden diseases, such as impotence. The consequences will be very serious. It's related to a lifetime of sexual happiness. You have to forget it. Sexual happiness, happy agreement." Yi Qian didn't realize what he meant, but she knew that she had to go along with him. She nodded seriously. "Okay, I'll remember it. For happiness, I'll definitely forget it. It's this sexual happiness." Xia Jinyuan took out a pen from the pen holder. He used a serious expression to hide the sadness in his heart. He picked up the pen and wrote the words, "sexual happiness," on his notebook. Yi Qian facepalmed. Her Captain Xia was always able to talk about nonsense with a straight face. "Do you remember it?" he asked again. Yi Qian nodded solemnly. "I definitely won't." He tore the piece of paper with the words, "sexual bliss," on it and threw it into the trash can. Xia Jinyuan heaved a sigh of relief after receiving the assurance. He then added, "If you mention it again, you'll be punished on the bed. Let's talk about work first." The corners of Yi Qian's mouth twitched. He was afraid that the conversation would go off topic again, so he quickly changed the topic. "I promise you, I won't mention it again. If I do, you can punish me however you want." Xia Jinyuan nodded in satisfaction and looked deeply at Yi Qian. There was a smile in his dark eyes that Yi Qian did not notice. "Let's talk about work first so that she won't worry about it. I don't plan to look at your training plan. You can look at mine first." He pushed his laptop in front of Yi Qian. When they talked about work, the man who was full of mischief earlier restrained his expression and said seriously, "You need to learn how to walk on your own. You can't doubt your own ability just because I don't have control over it. The training plan isn't fixed. You can adjust it at any time during future training. As long as you have a good understanding of each soldier's strengths and weaknesses, you can definitely improve the overall level through targeted training. You don't have to feel too much pressure. Just do your best." Yi Qian humbly listened to his advice. In front of him, she was a complete newbie. Every word he said was very useful to her. None of it was nonsense. Chapter 48-76. Xia Jinyuan's deep voice came from the room. "I can guide you to avoid detours, but I won't interfere with your matters. Sometimes, even if I find a problem, I won't point it out. Growing up too smoothly won't allow one to improve. I hope that you can accept the training and have your own style of leading soldiers. You don't have to copy my style from time to time. Take a look at my plan first. After reading it, we can talk about what you need to improve." As a boyfriend, Xia Jinyuan would never spoil Yi Qian regardless of the occasion, let alone treat Yi Qian like a canary in a cage. He would take Yi Qian with him and forge ahead with him. He would never use his powerful wings to protect Yi Qian on the military path of the special forces. He only hoped that Yi Qian could ride the wind and break through the waves, soar into the sky like an eagle, and live a wonderful life that belonged solely to her. Yi Qian looked at it very seriously. She wasn't angry at Xia Jinyuan for not helping her. Xia Jinyuan, who didn't participate, picked up a book on military theory and read it while accompanying Yi Qian. One of them bent over the table and carefully revised it, while the other quietly accompanied her without disturbing her. Although they didn't communicate, there was a warmth that no one could disturb. An hour later, Yi Qian looked up from her laptop. She twisted her stiff neck from leaning over the table for a long time and looked up at the man who had been accompanying her. She didn't know when he started reading, but he raised his slender legs and placed them on the other side of the table. He leaned his head against the back of the chair and covered his face with the book in his hand, only revealing his handsome chin that was illuminated by the light. He was indeed tired today, even more tired than she was. During the day, after chatting with Battalion Commander Tian, she went back to the dormitory to rest for a while, but he was busy until 9 at night before returning to the dormitory. He didn't rest and rushed to finish the training plan for the 20 male soldiers. When he finally finished, she came looking for him. He had been accompanying her until now and hadn't said a word of tiredness. Looking at Xia Jinyuan, who had fallen asleep, Yi Qian's gaze became increasingly gentle. Because it was rare for the two of them to be alone in a room, Yi Qian, who was warmed by his company, got up and couldn't help but reach out to gently and slowly remove the book that covered his handsome face. When the book was removed, she would sometimes see the dazed handsome face completely covered by the light. His eyebrows, narrow eyes, his nose, and thin lips were so delicate that she couldn't find a single flaw. Nighttime was a time when one could easily have wild thoughts, when one's rationality would be muddled, and it was also a time when one would be tempted to commit evil. The blurriness of the night, the charm of the night, would also thin the air, make the heart beat faster, and make the blood boil. That calm, unhurried, and even cold-blooded heart during the day began to beat faster because of the long time she spent looking at the handsome face that moved her heart. His heart suddenly rippled like a spring pond that had been thrown into chaos. His handsome face was like a drug. Other than messing up Yi Qian's heart, it also made her blood flow more restlessly. The shadow that was cast on the snow-white wall slowly bent down. The two shadows got closer and closer until they overlapped. Her warm and tender lips secretly kissed Xia Jinyuan's thin lips with deep love. As soon as their lips touched, Xia Jinyuan, who was sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. Yi Qian, who was caught doing something bad, was so shocked that he quickly sat back down on the bed. The light was too dim, but Yi Qian could see the heat in his eyes. It was so hot that it made her flustered, irritable, and confused. It was so hot that she couldn't help but look away. Chapter 48-77. It's not a dream, Xia Jinyuan spoke. His voice was a little hoarse and so deep that it made Yi Qian panic. Xia Jinyuan quickly retracted his long legs from the desk. At the same time, his arms were tightly wrapped around the waist of the person who had kissed him. Yi Qian clutched the army green bedsheets, which were so smooth that they looked like they had been ironed out. She lowered her voice and pretended to be calm as she replied, "It's getting late. I'll go back to my room and see if there's anything else to adjust. Rest early. Good night." She finished speaking in one breath without even catching her breath. "Were you stealing a kiss from me just now?" Xia Jinyuan's eyes were burning as he approached. Yi Qian instinctively wanted to get up and leave. She had been caught stealing a kiss. It was better for her to leave first. The panicked Yi Qian wanted to get away, but how could Xia Jinyuan, who had been aroused by the kiss, let her go? He quickly got up and pressed down on her shoulders with his warm palms, forcing Yi Qian to sit back down on the bed. He looked at her with his dark eyes and smiled wickedly. "It's too late. You came in and sat on my bed. I've already misunderstood your intentions. It wasn't easy for me to calm down, but you're seducing me again. Baby, I'm full of bad intentions right now and I need you to lead me away." Yi Qian shifted uneasily. Embarrassed and flustered, she stuttered even more. I still have work to do." Her words were weak and feeble. "As for work, there's no hurry. We have time for ourselves right now. We can do other more meaningful things. You're not in a hurry, but I am. We need to use it in the morning." Yi Qian, who had taken the initiative to seduce him, quickly pushed his hand away. She stuttered the entire time. "What more meaningful things? You can do them alone. I still have work to do." "Work?" Xia Jinyuan chuckled. She had already stolen a kiss from him. Would he let her go back to work? He didn't want to be a gentleman right now, so how could he let her go back to work? No, work was just an excuse. She wanted to leave after teasing him. He gently twirled his fingers and took a step forward with his long legs. He directly stepped on the side of the bed. It was obviously a rough action, but when he did it, one could only see the dominance of a man. Yi Qian still wants to get out of bed? That was impossible. Trapped in his space, even the tip of her nose was filled with his refreshing scent. Yi Jian began to realize that danger was approaching her at a high speed. He took a deep breath and raised his hands slightly with his palms facing outwards. He faced the dangerous man in a defensive posture. "Captain Xia, calm down, calm down. Pay attention to your image. Look, it's already 2:30 in the morning. We need to get up at 5 in the morning to do exercises. We only have 2.5 hours to sleep, so I won't disturb your work. Tomorrow, let's find a quiet place and we can, talk about life in depth? Talk about life in depth." This was the most explicit thing Yi Qian had ever said. The underlying meaning was very clear. Xia Jinyuan, on the other hand, did not have any thoughts. This was a crucial time for her. She probably wouldn't even have much time to rest in the next 6 months. Talking about life in depth was not something that could be solved in a day or two. He had already thought about it. In order to make up for his many years of absence, he wouldn't be able to go out for at least 3 days and 3 nights. So, even if she had such thoughts, he still had to endure it. "We'll talk about the future in the future. Let's finish what we're doing today." The tall figure looming over her approached with an inexplicable aura. This time, he didn't lift her chin with his fingers. Instead, he held her face with both hands. Chapter 48-78. Calm down? No way. Be mindful of the consequences? Of course, he wouldn't do anything that went too far. The goat had willingly thrown herself into his mouth, and since it was the middle of the night, he would be letting himself down if he didn't do something. Xia Jinyuan, who was determined to try something new tonight, became a little excited. Blood rushed to his head, and the corners of his eyes turned slightly red. Just as Yi Qian realized that something might happen next, a loud crash that made her teeth ache was heard. The hands that were holding her face suddenly tightened. The impatient Xia Jinyuan miscalculated the height and forgot that although he was in a single bed, he was actually in a double bed. He leaned over, and before he could kiss his girlfriend's lips, his forehead first made an affectionate kiss with the solid metal bed. Bang! He didn't know if it was because his head was too strong, but the metal bed shook when he hit it. The room was very quiet. Yi Qian tried to hold it in for a few seconds, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. He didn't need to be pushed down on the bed by Xia Jinyuan. He threw himself on the bed, buried his face in the bed, and laughed until his shoulders shook. Xia Jinyuan, who was seeing stars, covered his forehead with his right hand and slapped himself with his left hand. It wasn't hard, but there were only 2 people in the room. Even if it wasn't hard, Yi Qian could still hear the crisp sound of self-slapping. Undoubtedly, Xia Jinyuan's self-slapping made Yi Qian laugh even harder. He laughed until his body shook. Why did Captain Xia always drop the ball at crucial moments? It was the same last time, and it was the same this time. Ha 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 ha. It wasn't that she didn't want to give it to him, but her Captain Xia was really unlucky. Could this be the sorrow of an old child? Xia Jinyuan hated himself so much that he wanted to kill himself. The first time, he could say that he was unfamiliar, but what about the second time? Could he still say that he was unfamiliar? Unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second time. Forget it. He just wanted to do something meaningful now. Xia Jinyuan grabbed Yi Qian with his long arms and pressed his hands down. He made Yi Qian lie down, and his hands were locked above his head. Yi Qian stopped laughing and looked at him shyly with her dark eyes. "Don't be too presumptuous." She said it in a low voice, which meant that she accepted his next actions. In fact, they couldn't do anything meaningful in the military dormitory. Touching and kissing. It was very meaningful. They couldn't be presumptuous, and both of them had to restrain themselves. They couldn't leave marks of love in case they found out. The 2 shadows on the wall kept entangling with each other, and they didn't know how much time had passed. Yi Qian hugged her lover, who buried his head in her chest tightly. She closed her eyes and endured it with a dazed expression. Xia Jinyuan, who didn't dare to be too presumptuous, felt as if his whole body was on fire. After some time, Yi Qian, who was hugging him, felt his body suddenly tense up. He tensed up for a while, and when she heard him let out a long sigh, his tensed body began to slowly relax. Yi Qian, whose face was so red that her hands were burning, hugged him tightly and fled. When she returned to her dormitory, she quickly leaned her back against the door after closing it softly. She was like a fish swimming in water, and if one looked closely, they would see that her legs were trembling. It wasn't too presumptuous, but it had already brought her into a new world. It was the world of adults that she had experienced after experiencing 2 lifetimes. Her face was red, her heart was beating fast, and her limbs were trembling and weak. The aftereffects were very serious. Chapter 48-79. Yi Qian leaned against the door for at least 5 minutes before she moved. She was so embarrassed that she didn't turn on the lights. This time, she really went a little overboard. From now on, there would be no privacy in front of him. She threw herself onto the bed and covered her head with the blanket. After a long time, there was a bashful sound of from under the blanket. Only when she was out of breath did she poke her head out of the blanket. However, in less than a minute, she covered her head with the blanket again. This repeated until Yi Qian didn't even know what she wanted to do anymore. It had to be said that Father Fu's reminder was not unnecessary. Halfway through, Yi Qian was afraid that it was the last step. Even when she was in a state of delirium, she didn't forget to remind Xia Jinyuan, who was constantly messing around with her, to stay calm. The unbearably steady Xia Jinyuan used his incomparable self-control to not take off his pants no matter how busy his hands were on Yi Qian. Yi Qian's pants were also properly worn, except for her top, which was lifted. Yi Qian, who was guarding the last step, poked her head out of the stuffy and hot blanket again. In the pitch-black bedroom, she widened her eyes, raised her hand, and patted her face gently. She muttered to herself, "It's hard to stay calm. In the future, I'll stop looking for Captain Xia in the middle of the night." She paused for a while, then added, "Tonight's timing is really not right. After midnight, you must never enter Captain Xia's bedroom. Remember, don't get into trouble." Yi Qian muttered a few words in detail until she yawned. Only then did she close her eyes and go to sleep. On the other side, Xia Jinyuan, who had finally eaten some stir-fried meat and was only one step away from the big stew, came out of the bathroom feeling refreshed. He was holding a pair of underwear and a pair of shorts. After drying his pants, he whistled as he returned to the room and lay down on the bed. Under the light, his jade-like handsome face was satisfied. His dark eyes were filled with the satisfaction of eating and drinking to his heart's content. After receiving his reward, Xia Jinyuan covered himself with the quilt and closed his eyes with a smile. Lying on the bed with his eyes closed, he reminisced about the feeling in his heart for at least 5 minutes. He only stopped reminiscing when he felt the urge to raise his war flag again. If he didn't stop it now, he wouldn't be able to sleep a single minute tonight. Xia Jinyuan did not dare to think about it anymore. He sat up with the quilt in his arms, looked around, and muttered to himself, "We need to add another chair. The desk also needs to be moved. It can't be near the bed. It will cause trouble if it's near the bed." He also couldn't lock the door from the inside. Locking the door would also cause trouble. In the future, if there's anything you need, you can't talk about it in the room. It's better to talk about it while walking around the camp. After he finished thinking about the details and confirmed that he could not think of anything else, he turned off the table lamp. Hugging the quilt that seemed to have Yi Qian's faint scent, he finally fell asleep. There was no need to worry about oversleeping. As long as the horn sounded in the camp, he would definitely be able to wake up immediately. The same was true for Yi Qian. Outside the window, the silver moon hung diagonally in the sky. In the Gobi Desert outside the camp, the barren hills that exposed the light brown soil were like creeping beasts. They fell asleep together with the tranquility of the night. Time ticked away. The stars in the sky began to fade, leaving only a few brightest stars as embellishments. The night was about to pass, and a new day would soon arrive. In the camp, the sentries held their steel spears tightly in their hands and watched the surroundings with eagle-like eyes until dawn, when they changed shift. At 5 o'clock, before the sky brightened, the horn sounded in the camp on time. The lights in the dark camp lit up almost at the same time, including Yi Qian's and Xia Jinyuan's rooms. Chapter 4880. The two of them had only slept for about an hour, so today's training wasn't affected by the intimacy they had in the wee hours of the morning. After daybreak, the two of them, who had stayed up all night, quickly immersed themselves in their own training. On the way to the field, the two of them even bumped into each other. Their eyes met, and they nodded politely, choosing to forget about what had happened in the wee hours of the morning. After waking up, Yi Qian didn't have the time to be embarrassed about what had happened in the wee hours of the morning. Her responsibilities were heavier than Xia Jinyuan's, and she definitely couldn't let her personal feelings affect her training. In order to reassure the military, after looking at Xia Jinyuan's training schedule last night, they made some minor adjustments to the original training schedule for female soldiers. The overall direction remained the same, but the later stages of the training would be more difficult than the male soldiers' training. The female soldiers who had returned to their respective dormitories last night to discuss their instructor finished their 3-kilometer morning run early in the morning. When they gathered, Yang Zhen handed out a form to each of them. The female soldiers took the form and read the content clearly. None of them wasn't surprised. The training on the form sent chills down their spines. Yi Qian looked at the female soldiers whose expressions changed when they saw the form. She stood in front of them with a cold expression and said in a deep voice, "I will complete all the training like all of you. I will warm up in the early stages and strengthen in the later stages. I don't want to hear any complaints during the training and affect the enthusiasm of the entire class." As soon as she spoke, a cold aura rushed over. She didn't have the friendliness she had when she finished the race with them last night. This made the hearts of the female soldiers who had discussed their instructor's mild temper sink. The paper in their hands was only a few thin pages, but at this moment it felt as if it weighed a ton. Their instructor had a mild temper, but she was definitely a very difficult instructor to talk to. She was a very principled instructor. Their mentality changed subtly again, and some fear unconsciously appeared in their eyes. Yi Qian's cold gaze swept across the faces of the female soldiers one by one. Her only experience as an instructor was when she was in the 4th year of university. Facing a group of university students, and now facing soldiers with heavy responsibilities, she naturally couldn't be as easy to talk to as she was when she was training outside of university. As an instructor, she couldn't give the female soldiers the impression that she was easy to talk to. Yi Qian took in the subtle changes on the female soldiers' faces and took in a deep breath. It was impossible for him not to feel nervous, so he could only use a cold voice to cover it up. "I'm sure the original unit already knows why you're here. Although your assigned location has changed, it's just a change of location. The nature of the situation hasn't changed. Our country has yet to establish a female Special Forces team. Whether or not this Special Forces team can be established depends entirely on you. We only have half a year. After half a year, the military will assess our class. If we pass the assessment, we will be established. If we fail the assessment, we will be incorporated into the Pioneer Battalion. I've seen your resumes. You all have a common goal. Now that the military has given you a chance to achieve it, it's up to you whether you succeed or not. My training plan is the cornerstone to help you achieve your common goal. I hope you can cherish this opportunity and let the military see your results in half a year's time. Now, tell me, do you have any questions about this training? Can you accept it?" After speaking in a deep voice, Yi Qian didn't wait for the female soldiers to answer and suddenly raised their names. "Gao Xiao, do you have any questions? Can you accept it?" Chapter 4881. When Gao Xiao was suddenly called out, the one who had the biggest reaction was not herself, but Qiu Tong, who was standing beside her. Gao Xiao, who was called out, was frowning. She lowered her head and stared at the dense black words on the paper. She felt her scalp tingle. When she was suddenly called out, she immediately looked up and stared straight at Yi Qian. After a few seconds of silence, she pursed her lips and said loudly, "Instructor, you just said that you will train with us. Is that true?" "Of course," Yi Qian replied indifferently. The coldness between his eyebrows made Gao Xiao want to shrink her neck. "I repeat, I will train with you. Every word I say is not casually mentioned. You don't have to doubt the authenticity of my words. I will do what I say. Gao Xiao, do you accept?" Gao Xiao looked at the training on the paper again. She gritted her teeth and answered, "Yes. What about you?" Yi Qian's gaze slid across Qiu Tong's face. He turned to the other female soldiers and asked, "Answer me loudly." "Yes." The clear voices of the female soldiers were raised high. They used their determination to answer Yi Qian. "Very good. Since you have accepted, then use your actions to prove it to me. This is a military order. If I find any of you slacking off during training in the future, My punishment will be even worse than the training. Remember what I said today. Every word I say is true until the end of half a year's training. Female soldiers were actually more difficult to lead than male soldiers. Female soldiers tended to think too much. Once they thought too much, their negative emotions would increase. The male soldiers, on the other hand, were different. Their minds were not so twisted. As long as the instructor could convince them, nothing would happen. Female soldiers were different. Female soldiers' emotions came and went quickly. When their emotions rose, it was very likely that it would affect other female soldiers who were training normally. Yi Qian decided to say the ugly words first so that the female soldiers would not get emotional in the future and cause headaches for Battalion Commander Tian, Political Commissar Tang, and Company Commander Zhu. The reprimanding of the female soldiers quickly reached Battalion Commander Tian's ears. Battalion Commander Tian smiled at Political Commissar Tang and said, "She has the aura, but she is still a little inexperienced. She will be able to do things better after some training. Xiao Yi is already very good. When I first came to the barracks, I wasn't as brave as her. I only got started after the old political commissar taught me for 3 months. Political Commissar Tang smiled. He was still very tolerant of Yi Qian. You just graduated. Although your performance in school was outstanding, the military school is different from the army. As long as you don't make any mistakes, it's okay to be a little inexperienced. After a long time, it will naturally be easier to do things and deal with problems. Just wait, in less than a week, she will have all the female soldiers under her control." Battalion Commander Tian was puzzled and asked with a smile, "A week? Old Tang, oh old Tang, you trust her so much. Come, tell me, how did you find out?" Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong are not on good terms with each other, but this morning, she only mentioned Gao Xiao and not Qiu Tong. Why do you think this is? Why? Battalion Commander Tian waited quietly for Political Commissar Tang to answer. Political Commissar Tang looked at him and knew he was only waiting for the answer. He sighed and said, "That is to tell Qiu Tong that she has set her sights on the both of them. No, it should be said that they are the key targets to be groomed." "I'm sorry. I still don't understand the crux of the matter. It's just a name call. Maybe Gao Zhao's name is coincidentally called. Don't you think that Gao Zhao's name is easy to remember?" Battalion Commander Tian felt Political Commissar Tang was thinking too much. Political Commissar Tang saw this and could not be bothered to explain. He knew he did not look at their resumes carefully. Chapter 4882. Why did Yi Qian single out Gao Xiao? Gao Xiao herself didn't know, but Qiu Tong did. After training at noon, Qiu Tong, whose legs were as heavy as lead, went to find Yi Qian alone. She knew that their instructor was waiting for her. In the morning, when the instructor asked all the female soldiers if they would accept her harsh training, she was actually asking her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have glanced at her face. She knew that she didn't want to be in the same unit as Gao Xiao. She even wanted to use her family's connections to see if she could leave the Northwest. Unfortunately, before she could contact her family, Instructor Yi saw through her. Yi Qian guessed that Qiu Tong would talk to her, but she didn't expect Qiu Tong to come looking for her in less than a day. She was worried that Qiu Tong really wanted to leave. With Qiu Tong's family's connections, it wasn't difficult to transfer her out of a newly formed unit that didn't have any achievements. Looking at the female soldier who had no intention of competing with Gao Xiao, Yi Qian's eyes narrowed. Being a deserter once is enough. Do you want to run away a second time? Qiu Tong sat down and smiled bitterly. Instructor Yi, I can't get over it. The reason why Qiu Tong and Gao Xiao didn't get along was because of a man who tried to two-time. Qiu Tong didn't know that the man who looked elegant was also in contact with Gao Xiao. After she agreed to his pursuit, the two had only met 4 times. On the 5th time, Gao Xiao, who was on leave, opened a bottle of mineral water and splashed it at Chiu Tong, who didn't know. Fortunately, both of them were wearing casual clothes on the day of their leave. Chiu Tong knew what happened when the water splashed on her face. Shocked and angry, she went back to the unit and applied for leave immediately. Then she left her original post and stayed away from Gao Xiao without any explanation. What was there to explain? She did date that man as a couple. Although nothing else happened, she was indeed that man's girlfriend at the time. Yi Qian wasn't good at solving personal problems, but she knew that no matter what happened, running away wasn't the way to solve it. Your escape made Gao Xiao misunderstand you even more. Your retreat made Gao Xiao believe that everything she saw was real. You deliberately took the opportunity to take revenge on her. When you were sick and hospitalized back then, she replaced you on the mission that was supposed to be carried out by you and returned with third-class merit. She thought that you were jealous and purposely found her boyfriend. She still thinks so even now. I deliberately asked Gao Xiao this morning because I was worried that she would want to leave too. Gao Xiao is more emotional, so I could only calm her down first before I could calm you down. The misunderstanding between the two of you needs to be resolved. I don't think Gao Xiao will listen to your explanation now. I want to let Gao Xiao see you again through the competition of strength between the two of you. I want her to put aside the past and be able to face you calmly. When she is able to face you calmly, you will be able to overcome the hurdle in your heart. If we talk about the past again, it won't be filled with the smell of gunpowder, and we can truly untie the knot in each other's hearts. Yi Qian said seriously and sincerely suggested, Chiu Tong, if you keep running away, you'll definitely miss out on your dream. Stay for your own dreams. In order to realize his dream, it was nothing to suffer a little. No one's life would be smooth sailing. Everyone would encounter one or even more obstacles that were difficult to overcome. The hurdle in your heart has been troubling you for 1.5 years. Do you still want to continue? Chapter 48-83. Yi Qian could not understand why Qiu Yelan had stopped moving forward and even sacrificed her own dreams for the sake of the obstacles in her life. Qiu Yelan's life in her past life was difficult, but she did not choose to give up. No matter how difficult it was, no matter how helpless she was, she still clenched her teeth and persevered. She always believed that as long as she worked harder, perhaps everything would change. Everything would change because of her hard work. Even though she did not change much in her past life, in this life, she could still pat her chest and say that she had never thought of bowing down to Yi Ying even though she had been through so much in her past life. The only person she had ever knelt to was Yi Zhifan. She did not even kneel to Sun Dongqing. Because at that time, she had always thought that Yi Zhifan was her family, her biological uncle, her elder. She did not think that kneeling to an elder was breaking her backbone. It was so difficult that she did not even know if she would be able to see the sun rise tomorrow. She had always clenched her teeth and tried to collect evidence of Yi Zhifan's crimes, but, before she died, she did not get to see the day when Yi Zhifan fell from power. The regrets from her past life were finally realized in this life. She had finally achieved her goal of persevering for 2 lifetimes. From now on, she drew a line between her past life and this life. Yi Qian, who had always persevered, could not understand why Chiu Tong had given up on her dreams so easily. Compared to her dreams, what was the deepest hurdle in her heart? Yi Qian believed that the reason Chiu Tong could not overcome the hurdle in her heart had a lot to do with her upbringing. She came from a strict and upright family, so she believed that she had committed an unforgivable sin. Even if it was unintentional, she could not forgive herself. Chiu Tong was a female soldier with great potential. It was not impossible for her to become a special forces soldier. Besides, Chiu Tong, who had graduated from high school and joined the military, was 1 year younger than Yi Qian. The reason she had been deceived back then was probably because she was young and protected by her family. That was why she was careless and cajoled by a man. Therefore, Yi Qian really did not think that Chiu Tong had done anything wrong in this matter. Sometimes, it was really easy for an elegant man who worked in the business world to coax a young girl who lived in a simple environment and had no experience in love. Chiu Tong wasn't wrong and neither was Gao Xiao. What was wrong was that Chiu Tong couldn't face him and Gao Xiao back then. She didn't explain anything and left in a panic, which led to the stalemate. Even after a year and a half, even though Gao Xiao didn't get together with that liar who cheated on their feelings, Gao Xiao still couldn't calm down. Chiu Tong, who was standing in front of Yi Qian, lowered her head and pursed her lips without saying a word. She was a stubborn girl. It could be seen from the fact that she had insisted on joining the army after graduating from high school instead of going to university. It was very difficult for others to change her decision. Stubbornness was both a strength and a weakness. Seeing her remain silent and refuse to communicate, Yi Qian felt a headache coming on. Yi Qian thought about what Captain Xia had said. He thought about how he had faced a male soldier who was so stubborn that he had no idea where to start. In the end, he managed to convince him through communication. He took a light breath and said, "Chiu Tong, you're now taking an important step to realize your dream. If you give up because of a misunderstanding that can be explained clearly, I will look down on you. I don't want to talk about what you have to do for your family. I just want to say that for your own sake, you have to persevere and face it." Chiu Tong's fingers moved slightly, and her pursed lips tightened a little. Chapter 48-84. Chiu Tong had been suppressing her emotions all this time. She had also been suppressing the torment that she was unable to overcome in her heart. Yes, other than the humiliation, there was also the torment of morality. She had never thought that one day she would become a shameless intruder. It was a humiliation that she could never forget. But Instructor Yi was right about one thing. When her dream met with obstacles, how could she give up on her dream because of obstacles? Misunderstanding. Would Gao Xiao be able to accept such a shameful misunderstanding? Chiu Tong was a little confused. She didn't know how to explain it to Gao Xiao. It was the truth and she had seen it. Facts spoke louder than words. Would Gao Xiao be able to accept it? After listening to Yi Qian's advice, Chiu Tong's expression softened a little. Yi Qian, who had been carefully observing her and didn't miss her every move, was instantly delighted. The stubborn Chiu Tong was even more difficult to deal with than Gao Xiao. Although she was prepared for her to take the initiative and had even thought of what to say to persuade her, she was still a little nervous. No wonder G3 didn't want to be the deputy political commissar at all. She didn't want that either. It was better to be led by Captain Xia. If there were missions, they would carry them out. If there weren't any missions, they would train well. How relaxing would that be? On the first day of accepting the female soldier class, Instructor Yi was already a little afraid of officers. Fortunately, Chiu Tong had softened a little. It proved that he was right. Yi Qian was happy and continued, "Half a year. It's very likely that you only have half a year to realize your dream. This time, if you continue to waste your time on meaningless matters, I can tell you with certainty that the day you leave the vanguard camp, your dream will forever remain a dream. You will never be able to realize it in your lifetime. I'll record everything you've done in the past 6 months. I'll include everything you've done in the report, including your decision to give up. Then, I'll report everything to the military. From now on, your personal file will be recorded. It's impossible for you to use your family's connections like before. No matter how strong your family's connections are, they can't be stronger than the military's leaders. Think carefully. It's up to you to continue or give up." Yi Qian had already said everything that needed to be said. The rest was up to Chiu Tong to decide. The room was very, very quiet. Only the sound of their breathing could be heard. Chiu Tong, who was silent, lowered her head for a long time. There was not even any change in her expression on her face. Only the eyes that were covered by the eyelids were surging with undercurrent. Was it worth it to give up his dream for a misunderstanding? Was it worth it? Chiu Tong, who had never spoken, was not as cold as she appeared to be. She asked herself again and again in her heart, asking again and again until her stubbornness of not wanting to communicate with her family and friends finally wavered a little. She had been deceived by a man and had even interfered in the relationship of a comrade. This was the most shameful thing she had ever experienced in her 20-year-old life. If what Instructor Yi said was true, the misunderstanding could be explained, and the shame could be washed away. Chiu Tong slowly raised her head, and her tightly pursed lips finally loosened. Instructor Yi, don't you think I'm very shameful? Her words made Yi Qian feel relieved. He vaguely caught Chiu Tong's worries and what she was thinking. Chiu Tong cared a lot about other people's opinions. That was why she asked him if he thought she was shameful. Chapter 48-85. For her to ask such a question, it was clear that Chiu Tong desperately needed to be acknowledged. She desperately needed someone to help her and tell her that she wasn't shameful. The key to making Chiu Tong let go of her stubbornness and refusal to communicate with others was to tell Chiu Tong that everything was just a misunderstanding. As an instructor, she believed in her. Yi Qian, who had already grasped Chiu Tong's thoughts, answered seriously, "If there was a problem with your character, the military wouldn't have agreed to your application. The military would have investigated the misunderstanding between you and Gao Xiao thoroughly. You joining the military is also an opportunity for you." Like the moon shining through the fog, a ray of light flashed across Chiu Tong's gray eyes. They believed in her character and believed that she didn't do it on purpose. The military believed in her, and even Instructor Yi believed in her. On the contrary, it was her family. Every time something happened, her parents would first ask her to reflect on herself and find her mistake. As time went by, she had developed the habit of subconsciously thinking that everything was her fault whenever something happened. When Gao Xiao splashed water on her face, she knew she was wrong. That was why she had been carefully avoiding Gao Xiao and the female soldiers in the class. She was afraid that in a new environment, that shameful thing would be exposed because of Gao Xiao's arrival. Now, Instructor Yi told her that the military approved her application because they believed in her, and she believed in them too. Chiu Tong, who had been stubborn all this time, slowly clenched her fist. Her eyes stung. "Thank you, Instructor Yi. Thank you so much." Chiu Tong, whose eyes were already watery, straightened her back and saluted to express her gratitude. At this moment, she really felt that even her shoulders were much lighter. Nodding heavily, Chiu Tong, whose eyes were bright, said seriously, "I know what I should do. But please give me a few days. I need to give myself some courage before I can face Gao Xiao." "Don't worry. As long as the military believes in me, I won't give up on myself." After all, this was a hurdle that she hadn't gotten out of for a year and a half. Even if Chiu Tong heard Yi Qian's words and remembered them in her heart, she couldn't do it immediately. She still had to think about it carefully. Yi Qian didn't ask her to face Gao Xiao immediately. Chiu Tong's attitude already made her very happy. Yi Qian thought that he would have to spend at least a week to half a month with Chiu Tong, but in the end, it was settled in less than half an hour. Even though Yi Qian was usually calm, he couldn't help but feel a little happy. After Chiu Tong left, Yi Qian leaned back in his chair and laughed from time to time. Everything was difficult at the beginning. Yes, she had made a good start. It was a sign that the next one would be even better. Yi Qian was so happy that he did not notice that a slender figure had been standing at the door for a long time. Xia Jinyuan stood at the door for a long time after Chiu Tong left. When Chiu Tong came out and bumped into him, she even called out, "Instructor." Looking at Yi Qian's silly yet adorable behavior, the smile in Xia Jinyuan's eyes was like rippling water, gently spreading and full of tenderness. It seemed that his girl had already settled Chiu Tong. Otherwise, she wouldn't be secretly happy alone. Seeing that he had not been discovered, Xia Jinyuan coughed softly. Yi Qian, who had his back to the door, jumped up in shock, looking a little embarrassed. "What are you laughing about?" Xia Jinyuan asked knowingly as he strode in with his long legs. "Could it be that you were very satisfied with the training this morning?" "It has nothing to do with the training." Yi Qian's eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. "I just solved a difficult problem, so I'm happy." Yes, he could tell that she was very happy, and not just happy. Chapter 4886. This time, Xia Jinyuan did not close the door when he came in. He leaned against the desk and purposely kept a distance. Even if someone suddenly came in, they would not be able to tell that there was something fishy going on between them. Xia Jinyuan smiled and asked, "Chiu Tong?" Yi Qian did not answer immediately. She looked at him suspiciously and frowned. "Did you stand at the door for a while just now?" Xia Jinyuan smiled. "Yes, for a while." "No wonder you hit the nail on the head." Yi Qian sighed. "I wanted to hide it from you first and give you a surprise later. In the end, you found out the moment she left. I didn't feel any sense of accomplishment." Xia Jinyuan could not help but laugh at her pitiful look. When his little fox was cute, he really wanted to hug her and give her a few kisses. "I'm sorry. Next time, I'll pretend I didn't know." "That's not good either. How can you pretend you didn't know? Didn't you come here to keep an eye on me? If you pretend you didn't know, I can still tell. You're in charge of training, and I'm in charge of supervising. I have no choice but to obey my boss's orders." Xia Jinyuan sighed along with her. He looked like he was in a difficult position. Military orders cannot be disobeyed. I can't hide it even if I wanted to. Yi Qian saw that he was acting in front of her again. She was both amused and annoyed. "You're talking glibly again. What do you want from me? If there's nothing else, I won't keep you. Take a nap and continue training in the afternoon." Wow, he's already learned how to chase people away. Being an instructor and having a military rank is indeed different. He's much more confident. Xia Jinyuan quickly flicked her forehead with his slender fingers. "You little heartless girl. You needed me last night and came to harass me in the middle of the night. Now that you don't need me anymore, you kick me away. You have two different attitudes in front of me and behind me. How disappointing." He even patted his chest and emphasized to Yi Qian how disappointed his heart was. Yi Qian's gaze turned even colder. "Are you okay? Captain Xia, please step aside." "Thank you." Now that Chiu Tong's matter had been resolved, Yi Qian's tone became lighter. Xia Jinyuan was overjoyed when he saw this. No one wanted more than him to see Yi Qian leading the team and training smoothly as soon as possible. Since yesterday, he had begun to lay down the foundation for her future training, and now it seemed that his efforts had paid off. "Yes, but I'm not the one looking for you. My boss called and wants to talk to you tonight." At the mention of boss Major General Yang, Yi Qian's face changed like a character in a Sichuan opera. His expression became extremely serious. "What's the exact time?" "Any time after 8 o'clock is fine. I guess he wants to ask if you're used to it and if you have any difficulties." "If you have any difficulties, you can tell me, but don't expect the boss to give you advice. Relying on yourself is the most reliable, more reliable than relying on me." Xia Jinyuan said the last sentence very slowly. Of course, he had to say it properly. Yi Qian agreed very much. However, she still had to say a few words. Just as she was about to speak, Xia Jinyuan seemed to have guessed what she was going to say and spoke first. "More reliable than relying on me. It's only limited to the military, not limited to daily life." She almost made a big mistake. Fortunately, she discovered it in time and remedied it. Yi Qian wanted to say something. Xia Jinyuan could guess what Yi Qian wanted to say based on his eagerness to explain. Relying on herself was the most reliable, more reliable than relying on her boyfriend. In that case, she would not rely on him in the future. She wanted to say that she was intercepted again. Xia Jinyuan saw her regretful expression and secretly rejoiced. Chapter 4887. Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who had escaped death, immediately reflected on himself and came to the conclusion that men should never talk nonsense. The consequences of talking nonsense would be very, very serious. It had to be said that Lieutenant Colonel Xia gained more and more experience in the pursuit of his wife. Later on, he even pretended to be experienced and taught the younger generation how to pursue their wives. He even succeeded. For this, he was proud of himself in front of Yi Qian for a long time. When Yi Qian saw that he reacted so quickly, she felt it was a pity and threw the topic aside. She wasn't an unreasonable person who insisted on harping on other people's mistake. As long as it wasn't a big mistake, Yi Qian would basically leave it at that and not take it to heart. After chatting, Qiu Tong talked about Gao Xiao. When Gao Xiao was mentioned, Yi Qian was much more relaxed. Gao Xiao was much easier to deal with than Qiu Tong. However, she immediately took the bait once she was provoked. She even dared to ask if she, as an instructor, was really training with the female soldiers. Gao Xiao was upright and hated evil. If she was in ancient times, she would definitely be a heroine. She didn't have many twists and turns in her heart. If it was one, it was one. If it was two, it was two. Qiu Tong admired her stubbornness. Therefore, she didn't want Gao Xiao to be affected by those messy misunderstandings and target the innocent Qiu Tong, who was implicated. As long as the two of them stayed in the army and Qiu Tong had the intention to reconcile and explain, Yi Qian was relieved. You female soldiers all like to keep your words to yourself. As for us, we thought you guys really didn't care, so we didn't take it to heart. Who knew that you guys were just saying you didn't care, but your hearts were so uncomfortable. After listening to Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong's twisted thoughts, even Xia Jinyuan, who was smooth and slick, had a headache. What were they talking about? Was there anything that couldn't be said face to face? Was there any misunderstanding that couldn't be explained face to face? Why did they have to make things difficult for each other? After Xia Jinyuan finished lamenting, he glanced at Yi Qian, who was staring at him with a half-smile. Suddenly, Xia Jinyuan shuddered and wanted to slap himself. I'm talking nonsense again. I'm being blind, and I'm talking nonsense again. It's a good thing that you're different from them. Even if you're unhappy, you can say it out loud. Like Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong, those two are really a headache. The military has the foresight to let you be their instructor. If it were us male soldiers, none of us would be able to handle them. It's not that I can't handle it, it's just that the way I handle it is different from yours. Xia Jinyuan once again unleashed his little universe to make up for his mistake. Could it be that he was so infuriated by the 20 soldiers that even his IQ dropped? Otherwise, why would he keep making mistakes? Don't spout nonsense again. Xia Zhongxiao, who was ringing the alarm for himself, collected his thoughts, his handsome face solemn and cold as he said in a low voice, "If I were to be the one handling the relationship between the two of them, I'd directly have them explain it to each other face to face. Don't let yourself get angry. If you have the time to find fault with others, you might as well focus on the righteous path." After he finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan's dark eyes flashed with an inexplicable darkness. He fixed his gaze on Yi Qian, who still had a smile on his face, and slowly said, "Although your way of handling it is effective, it takes too long to see results. I suggest you use my way of handling it." This was the biggest difference between men and women when it came to handling problems. Yi Qian, whose smile was slightly restrained, sighed and said, "They're different from the male soldiers. I've thought about it for a long time. I can't blindly use force. After trying it out today, Qiu Tong's words let me know that I've found the right way. But it also depends on the person. Some female soldiers are stubborn, so you have to be tough. For example, Gao Xiao is tough enough. If you go soft, she'll think that you're easy to bully and have no real ability. Chapter 4888. Ever since Yi Qian received the roster of female soldiers and looked at their resumes, Yi Qian had been looking for ways to make these female soldiers submit to him as soon as possible. This was a difficulty that a commander had to overcome, and she was no exception. Yi Qian's sigh made Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was trying his best to keep a serious face, smile. His thin lips curved up like a cool breeze, and he looked very elegant. You're improving very quickly. The Major General will be very happy when he hears about it. Female soldiers are indeed different from male soldiers. Captain Xia, it seems like I really can't ask you for advice. It's better for me to slowly figure it out myself. Although the results are slow, the method is right. The way you handled it is very good, but I don't think it's appropriate to treat female soldiers. Xia Jinyuan parachuted into the Snowfield Brigade and only found the weaknesses of the Special Forces soldiers. He then broke them one by one to let the Special Forces soldiers who disobeyed him know that although he was parachuted in, he wasn't easy to fool. Even if they were humiliated by Xia Jinyuan in public, the male soldiers would only lose face at the time. After that, they would restrain themselves and accept him wholeheartedly. His way of handling things might work on the male soldiers, but it wouldn't work on the female soldiers at all. Women were thin-skinned to begin with. If you humiliated them in public, they might not say anything on the spot, but they would secretly hate you even more. Although female soldiers were soldiers, they were still women. They were meticulous and wouldn't accept a rough way of handling things. It was easier for them to accept Yi Qian's way of handling things that took care of each other's dignity and made them feel at ease. The stubborn Qiu Tong liked Yi Qian's way of handling things. He seemed soft, but in fact, he had a way of handling things. Looking at his lover who wasn't moved by his advice, Xia Jinyuan's eyes moved slightly. He smiled disapprovingly and said, "You can let them get used to your way of handling things. As long as they get used to it, there's nothing wrong with it." At first, Yi Qian didn't notice anything. It wasn't until Xia Jinyuan said this that Yi Qian's heart popped out. When he looked at him again, there was more scrutiny in his eyes. Something was not right. Usually, Captain Xia would not be like this. The sharp-witted Yi Qian fixed her gaze on the man who was leaning against the desk lazily. His dark and deep eyes held a faint smile that made one feel comfortable. He had an elegance that could make one's heart race. He looked at her without blinking. When he saw her looking at him, he raised his eyebrows slightly. There was an indescribable wildness in his eyes. Beauty was great, but she could not be seduced by men at this time. Yi Jian, who was scrutinizing him, said with a faint smile, "Captain Xia, are you up to no good again? Why would I do that? I'm serious about my proposal. As long as it was effective, there was no need to be constrained by any form. Instructor Yi, don't forget that we only have half a year." He spoke normally, but in his heart, he was thinking something completely different. The little fox that he had watched grow up was becoming more and more clever. She had more and more ideas. She had a set of principles that were quite strong. It would be difficult for him to trick her. He still had to trick her. What if it worked? What if she was successfully tricked by him? Xia Jinyuan lowered his eyes slightly. The coldness in his dark eyes disappeared. If it worked, then she wouldn't have the chance to talk to him so casually like now. She would deal with him in whatever way she needed to deal with him. She would never be soft-hearted. His serious answer made Yi Qian think that he might have been overthinking and misunderstood. Even though there was still a trace of strangeness in his heart, Yi Qian could only put it aside for the time being. With a serious face, he pointed out what was wrong with Xia Jinyuan. Chapter 4889. When Xia Jinyuan saw that he was in the wrong with a serious face, The coldness in his eyes disappeared, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Captain Xia, you're wrong this time. Quick results don't mean that it will last. If you're too forceful, the results will be superficial and can be seen as suppression. You once said that we want the soldiers to be convinced. Using forceful suppression to get temporary results will only make the soldiers more resentful. After a long time, their hearts will be scattered. Although they're obedient on the surface, they'll betray us behind our back. In the long run, we'll be confused by the illusion and think that the soldiers are truly obedient to us. If you can't reach the top, you'll end up deceiving yourself. Your method is suitable for male soldiers, but it's definitely not suitable for female soldiers. After speaking seriously, Yi Qian let out a long sigh. Sigh, I'd rather rely on myself than rely on you. Captain Xia, I have to take my lunch break. You should take a break too. It was the first time that Xia Jinyuan, who had been ordered to leave, was criticized so seriously by Yi Qian. He felt that it was very rare. The smile in his eyes was so deep that if he looked at him one more time, he would fall head first into his charm and never look back. I humbly accept Instructor Ye's criticism. Rest early. Good afternoon. Before he left, he bowed like a gentleman. His deep black eyes looked at her with a meaningful smile, and his long legs moved gracefully as he left. What else was there to be worried about? She was a smart and fearless girl. She was smarter than anyone could imagine. Although she was inexperienced, she was very good at summarizing. She wasn't afraid of hardships and was willing to work hard. It wasn't that the leaders in the military had good foresight. Yes, he had better foresight than the leaders. If he hadn't discovered this dusty pearl early on, the military wouldn't have such a talent. He had to mention it to his boss later and see if there were any rewards. For example, whether she could take a longer wedding leave or something like that. The more he thought about it, the more the smile on Lieutenant Colonel Xia's handsome face deepened. Yi Qian didn't see the smile on his face. He closed the door and lay on the bed. The strange feeling in his heart hadn't disappeared. He still felt that there was something wrong with Captain Xia just now. Forget it, I'd better rest. Captain Xia had his own way of doing things, and she had hers too. It could not be said that Captain Xia was wrong. It could only be said that his method was not suitable for female soldiers. Just as he had said, he would rather rely on himself than rely on him. It was more reliable to rely on oneself at any time. When Grandpa Jen and Uncle Chern were still alive, they always taught him that if he wanted to stand firm in this world, he had to be independent. Only by being strong and independent could one not be destroyed, no matter how strong the wind or how heavy the rain was. It was obvious that relying on oneself was much more reliable than relying on others. The faces of his deceased relatives appeared in his mind. He thought of Uncle Jen, then thought of Principal Chen, and then thought of Principal Chen's murderer. Yi Qian closed his eyes and clutched the blanket tightly. A ruthless look flashed across his face. She would definitely find Uncle Chen's murderer and take revenge with her own hands. Definitely. Definitely. Yi Qian, who could not calm down, turned over and hugged the dark green blanket that was given to him by the platoon. He rolled around for a few more minutes before falling asleep. After leaving, Xia Jinyuan did not immediately return to the dormitory. Instead, he walked towards the office. He needed to talk to Major General Yang again and tell him that Yi Qian did not need to worry. She was very capable. It was good to have her own opinions. Xia Jinyuan did have a problem just now. He purposely said that to see if Yi Qian would be led astray by him. It turned out that even as a boyfriend, he had underestimated Yi Qian. It was impossible for her to be led astray by him and even refute him immediately. Major General Yang could rest assured, and so could he. Chapter 4890. Major General Yang, who received the phone call, laughed out loud and said, "Good." It seemed that they were just worrying themselves. Captain Yi was no ordinary person, so there was no need to worry too much about her. There was no need at all. He could just let her go and let her develop. Xia Jinyuan immediately took the opportunity to mention a reward. Not to mention anything else, but to be able to take a longer wedding leave. Wedding leave? For a longer time? Major General Yang, who was still laughing, was so shocked by Xia Jinyuan's wedding leave that he started coughing. While he was coughing, Xia Jinyuan said leisurely, "Don't get agitated, just say something." Don't get agitated. How could he not get agitated? Major General Yang, who was coughing so hard that his face turned red, wanted to slap someone. You're planning to get married? When did you decide this? Why isn't there any news about it? Does the Commander-in-Chief know? Did you say anything? After the wedding, the two of you will stay in separate places? Does Xiao Yi not plan to join your brigade? Marriage was a big deal for anyone, but it had a bigger impact on Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian. If the two of them really planned to get married, they would face the same question Major General Yang asked. You misunderstood. Seeing that Major General Yang had misunderstood, Xia Jinyuan had to explain further. I don't plan to get married for the time being, but I'll remember to ask for a reward in advance. Major General Yang felt that he had jumped from a high-altitude parachute with a faulty parachute. His heart was in his throat. Do you have nothing better to do? Wedding leave? Why don't you say you want to retire? Don't even think about it for 5 years. I didn't suggest it, but the Commander-in-Chief suggested it himself. If you have any objections, please talk to the Commander-in-Chief. You still have the cheek to mention marriage leave? I want to transfer you back now. I don't want you to go crazy and affect Xiao Yi. Since Xiao Yi could solve the problem on her own and didn't need Xia Jinyuan's advice, Major General Yang couldn't help but narrow his eyes. In that case, he really had to consider transferring Xia Jinyuan back in advance. When Xia Jinyuan heard this, he did not want to negotiate any further. He cursed under his breath, a bunch of old foxes. His expression and tone changed as he said in a low voice, I have something urgent to deal with. I'll hang up first. Before he left, he added, Major General, don't you know that it's easier to invite the devil in than to send him away? Then, he hung up the phone. Major General Yang was so angry that his face turned blue. Was it easier to invite the devil than to send him away? Sixth brother with a family Xia, if the Commander-in-Chief makes a move, do you still have a chance to resist? Xia Jinyuan hung up the call with Major General Yang and called the old house in the evening. He chatted with Master Xia and old Madame Xia for a while and told them that he was with their favorite granddaughter-in-law. Old Madame was so happy that she beamed with joy. As she listened to her grandson speak, she covered the microphone and whispered to old Master Xing, who was close to her. Sixth brother is more reliable than his father. He knows that he has to protect his wife. He's already chased her all the way to the army. Old Master Xing wanted to hear what his grandson had to say. He was happy, but you go first. I'll come after you. Although he was happy, he still had to be careful. Old Master Xing was much calmer than old Madame Xia. Old Madame Xia didn't think too much about it. It was good that her grandson was considerate. Xia Jinyuan, who had made old Madame Xia happy, wanted to marry their granddaughter-in-law as soon as possible. He also wanted to prevent Commander-in-Chief Xia, who loved to drag him down and make trouble for him from time to time, from dragging him down. Xia Jinyuan decided to make a move in advance and use old Madame Xia's power to stop Commander-in-Chief Xia from making trouble for him. Chapter 48-91. Therefore, Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was never soft-hearted when it came to tricking his father, tactfully expressed that his father would probably think of ways to transfer him away. If his marriage was delayed because of this, he asked old Madame not to worry. He and Yi Qian would definitely get married, but it might be a little later. When old Madame heard this, In order to let her favorite grandson marry a granddaughter-in-law as soon as possible, she directly decided on the phone, "Leave it to Grandpa and Grandma. Your father doesn't know what to do. Grandma and Grandpa will teach him. How dare he ruin her grandson's wedding? Humph, he's just asking for a beating." When it was old Master Xia's turn to speak, old Madame Zhang stood aside and reminded Xia Jinyuan to be careful of his influence. He must not lose sight of the big picture for the sake of small gains, and must not violate the rules and regulations. Xia Jinyuan kept all of these in mind. He did not dare to joke about Yi Qian's future, nor did he want to be used as a tool in the future. A week later, Commander-in-Chief Xia returned to the old mansion to visit his parents. As soon as he entered the house, old Madame Zhang swung the horsewhip that old Master Xia had used to ride horses to war and lashed it at Commander-in-Chief Xia. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had time to come back, was shocked by old Madame Zhang's attitude. The horsewhip had been covered in dust for many years, so why was it hitting him today? He did not do anything to anger old Madame Zhang. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had been tricked by his son, was confused and could not figure out what mistake he had made. He looked at the horsewhip again. It was so strong that it made a whooshing sound. Master Xia was so scared that he hurriedly said, "Old madam, be careful, be careful! Don't sprain your waist." Commander-in-Chief Xia dodged left and right, unable to get close to the whip. Master Xia's face darkened and he shouted, "Do you want your mother to sprain her waist? Stand still and let your mother whip you to calm down." Family Xia's uncle, who came in a few steps later, quietly retracted his leg and considerately pulled his wife to the side. "It's rare for Mom to be angry. Let's go later so that we don't get implicated." It was better to forget about trying to stop the fight. On the phone several times, the robust old lady said that she was a little bored and wanted to find something to do. She had no idea where she was going with her body. However, here came the hard part. Eldest aunt had long been used to the interaction between brothers in the family Xia. The old ones were like this, and the young ones were like this as well. Of course, it could only be done by their own family members. If outsiders wanted to do bad things, the brothers would work together to cut through gold. Don't just watch the show. Be careful, Mom might sprain her waist or sprain her ankle. No matter how strong an old man's body is, he can't be compared to a young man. If he's not careful, he'll be injured. Eldest aunt wasn't worried about her brother-in-law, but she was worried that old madam would get hurt. Commander-in-Chief Xia was also worried. Seeing that the old master had spoken, the Commander-in-Chief Xia let out a long sigh and stood still, taking 3 lashes from the old madam. Commander-in-Chief Xia, whose calves were trembling from the lashes, respectfully asked the old madam if her anger had subsided. Then, he asked the old madam to tell him where he was wrong so that he could correct it. Who was the old madam? She was used to all kinds of situations and had been involved in countless conspiracies. Commander-in-Chief Xia might be in a high position now, but the old madam used to be in a high position too. Don't even think about getting information from her. She snorted twice and threw the horsewhip into the arms of Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was still wearing his military uniform and had golden tassels and golden stars on his shoulders. Her voice was old and full of authority. "If you want to hit me, then hit me. Do you still need to find a reason?" Such a strong reason made Commander-in-Chief Xia speechless. He could only accept it. However, Commander-in-Chief Xia still found out later. He was so angry that his heart ached. Chapter 4892. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than his father. No one knows a father better than his son. Fortunately, Xia Jinyuan made the first move. Otherwise, he might have been transferred back to the army ahead of time. Commander-in-Chief Xia thought that since Yi Qian could handle the situation on his own, Xia Jinyuan, who was sent to guide him, could come back. There was no need to keep him. Killing a donkey to get rid of the millstone was just like that. Why would Xia Jinyuan come back? As the saying goes, it's easier to invite the devil in than to send him away. He was transferred to the northwest without a word. He could see Yi Qian face to face every day. This was a good thing. Now that he saw that although Yi Qian was inexperienced, he was fully qualified to be an instructor, so he wanted to transfer him back? Don't be so calculative. I won't cooperate every time. If I cooperate, I'll transfer him back. If I don't, I'll transfer him back. With old Madame Yang's persuasion, Commander-in-Chief Xia calmed down and thought about it. He even chatted with Major General Yang. Only then did he gradually stop thinking about transferring Xia Jinyuan back. Major General Yang understood why Commander-in-Chief Xia wanted to transfer Xia Jinyuan back. As a father, how could he want to trick his own son? Commander-in-Chief Xia never provided convenience for his only son, but he wouldn't really stand by and do nothing. As long as he didn't violate his principles and discipline, Commander-in-Chief Xia would silently protect his only son's growth in his own way. For example, young people were more or less impulsive. They had been together all the time. What mistakes did they make? Once their mistakes were exposed, even if Commander-in-Chief Xia wanted to protect them, countless pairs of eyes watching the Xia family would not let go of Xia Jinyuan's mistakes. I'm happy that Xiao Yi is able to take charge early on, but I'm also worried. If she's not smart enough, Old Six will put away his playful thoughts and focus on helping Xiao Yi learn as soon as possible. But Xiao Yi is very smart. She doesn't need the higher-ups to deal with the class matters. She can handle them herself. Do you think I don't know what Old Six is thinking? As soon as Xiao Yi learns, he'll be happy. I wanted to transfer him back in advance, but I was worried that he would be overjoyed and leave something to be used against him. After all, they were not in the Snowfield Brigade, where even the slightest mistake would be magnified infinitely. This was why Commander-in-Chief Xia wanted to transfer Xia Jinyuan back in advance. It wasn't that he didn't trust Xia Jinyuan, but that he was worried as a father. Even though Commander-in-Chief Xia knew that his only son had a sense of propriety and wouldn't act recklessly, he still couldn't completely relax. He would rather the two of them be separated for a short period of time than leave any hidden dangers behind. Commander-in-Chief Xia was an introverted person. He didn't like to talk about what he was thinking, and he was even more reluctant to tell Xia Jinyuan about his worries. He hid his fatherly love deep in his heart, so much so that old Madame sometimes felt that he was too cruel to Xia Jinyuan. Actually, it really wasn't. This time, if Commander-in-Chief Xia hadn't suddenly told him the real reason behind his plan, Major General Yang wouldn't have known what was going on. After a long silence, Major General Yang said, "Commander-in-Chief, sometimes it's better for you to be more direct. Even I, who's by your side every day, don't know the real reason. Old Six probably doesn't know either." No wonder old Madame was so angry that she whipped him 3 times in a row. This time, Major General Yang only said silently in his heart. Commander-in-Chief Xia took a sip of water and answered rather proudly, "No, Old Six knows." Major General Yang was puzzled. Old Six knows? How would he know? He had already complained to old Madame. If he knew, would he complain? Major General Yang was very skeptical about this. He needed Commander-in-Chief Xia to explain. Chapter 48-93. Commander-in-Chief Xia's office was located in a building in the military headquarters. It looked ordinary and inconspicuous from the outside, but it was heavily guarded inside. In addition to the round-the-clock infrared surveillance, there were also countless hidden probes. It was true that there was a guard every 10 steps. At this time, it was gradually getting dark outside. All the work for the day was done, and there were no more documents to be delivered to the clerical department. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had some personal time, drank a glass of water and moistened his throat. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who felt comfortable in his heart, opened his mouth with a smile. Why did he dare to complain to old Madam? First, he was worried that he would really be transferred back. Second, he was angry that I didn't believe him. Even the wrinkles at the corners of Chief Commander Xia's eyes were filled with comfort as he spoke with a smile. Even the retired old master can't interfere with the matters in the army. Can old Madam? The only thing old Madam can interfere with is to give me a beating and let me understand that if I don't even believe my own son, I'm only asking for a beating. After being enlightened, Major General Yang suddenly saw the light. He couldn't help but laugh. The grudges between you and sixth brother are really unique. Even though we've been with you for decades, we still can't see through it. They clearly knew about it, but they still wanted to set each other up. They were secretly competing with each other to the point that these old subordinates really thought that the father and son were not on good terms. They would quarrel whenever they met and set each other up behind their backs. Commander-in-Chief Xia was very reserved and didn't let his pride show completely. He cleared his throat and explained to his old subordinates, before sixth brother grew up, he did think that I was a ruthless father. As for me, I didn't want to explain. I was angry that he couldn't understand me, so I just used force. Especially when sixth brother was young and rebellious. Sometimes my temper was so bad that I scared myself. Later, sixth brother became more sensible and slowly learned to understand my temperament. It was only then that the tendon in his heart twisted back. It's a pity that the way we get along with each other is fixed. I'm not used to it, and sixth brother isn't used to it either. I dare say that if I suddenly ask about sixth brother's well-being one day, sixth brother will definitely think that I'm sick. He might even think that I don't have much time left and want to release his great fatherly love as soon as possible. Major General Yang. Such a unique father and son relationship greatly broadened Major General Yang's horizons. After he left, Major General Yang wanted to verify whether Commander-in-Chief Xia was the only one who thought this way. A month later, he contacted Xia Jinyuan again to ask about Yi Qian and pretended to casually talk about it. In order to prevent Xia Jinyuan from noticing that he was trying to test him, Major General Yang advised the father and son not to talk things out peacefully. Instead, they had to end it with violence. This would not solve the problem at all. It would only make the relationship between the father and son get thinner and thinner. Major General Yang had been trying to persuade him, and Xia Jinyuan did not suspect anything. He simply replied, "If one day the Commander-in-Chief suddenly shows so much concern for me, I'll think that he's sick. You don't have to think too much. The Commander-in-Chief and I are a little different from ordinary people. You just need to know that our relationship will not be damaged or thinned." After that, when Major General Yang saw the father and son staring at each other as if they would never talk to each other again, Major General Yang would sit next to them and watch with interest while drinking water. When Commander-in-Chief Xia found out that Xia Jinyuan's answer was as he had guessed, and that his ex-wife had been coming to the military headquarters for a few days in a row, he was not angry. He only asked the guards to send his ex-wife away politely. Yes, Madame Xiao came to stop him again. Chapter 4894. Although Madame Xiao did not show up in front of family Xia from time to time, she had never stopped paying attention to Xia Jinyuan. However, family Xia had always kept a low profile. Even if she wanted to pay attention, it was difficult for her to find out any news about Xia Jinyuan. This time, Madame Xiao learned about Xia Jinyuan from Madame Li, her close friend of many years. Madame Xiao, who had been away from the country for too long, did not have many good friends in the country. Even though she was Commander-in-Chief Xia's ex-wife, she was not the wife of any military chief. The only person she could find out about family Xia was the Li family. Madame Li and Madame Xiao were in a relationship. Madame Xiao was also using Madame Li to find out about family Xia and her only son, Xia Jinyuan. There were no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. Madame Xiao was not stupid. She had no one to rely on after returning to the country. She would not let herself be without a friend. Even though this friend had been true to her for decades and had once instigated her to betray her marriage, abandon her husband and son, and leave the country with her lover, Madame Xiao, who gradually understood, did not fall out with Madame Li. Because she knew herself well. She knew that even without Madame Li, with her character, she would not be able to stay in a marriage where she could not see her husband even once a year. Even if Madame Li's instigation added fuel to the fire, it was also her tacit consent to push the boat with the current. Therefore, she would not push her own responsibility onto others, and there was no need for her to fall out with her friends who had been true and false for decades. Madame Xia had always said that Madame Xiao was a very selfish person who lived for herself. It was clear that Madame Xia was sharp and saw through Madame Xiao's nature. When a person lived like Madame Xiao, who could leave or stay as she pleased, she could live a life of her own. Unfortunately, after returning to China, she suddenly remembered that she still had a son. She wanted to make up for it a little. She thought about how difficult it was to break the bloodline, so she wanted to get closer to him. However, she forgot that even though the men of the Xia family were affectionate, they would never be sloppy. They would not recognize her again just because she turned around. Xia Jinyuan wouldn't, and neither would Commander-in-Chief Xia. Madame Xiao watched her ex-husband's car drive away. She stared blankly at the car with a military license plate as it drove further and further away. Her hand tightly gripped the expensive handbag in her hand. When the car drove out of her sight, Mrs. Xiao adjusted her breathing and calmed down a little. Then, she took out her phone and called Mrs. Li. "Can you help me ask Old Li if Xia Xinhui has any meetings during this period?" When Madame Xiao spoke, Madame Li, who was waiting for news at home, knew that she didn't see Commander-in-Chief Xia again. Her face turned cold. Madame Li nodded and said, "Okay, I'll ask Old Li when he comes back. You don't be too anxious. Who knows, maybe it's just something our little girl came up with." When Du Jiai, who was sitting next to her, heard this, she was so anxious that she lowered her voice and said, "Mom, I'm not blindly guessing. If Yi Ying isn't a good person, then how good can Yi Qian be? I've seen her with Xia Jinyuan before. It's the same with my cousin." Madame Li hurriedly covered the phone to prevent it from being overheard. She glared at her impatient daughter and reprimanded, "Who would believe you when you say that she disappeared without a trace? Sit down. Mom knows what to do." Regardless of whether there was a trace or not, that wild girl was indeed not a good person. If she really hooked up with Xia Jinyuan or Li Jinyan, it wouldn't affect her daughter at all. She could hook up with them however she wanted. Chapter 48-95. Mrs. Li had a very bad impression of Yi Ying. Even after a few years, whenever Yi Ying's name was mentioned, her heart would still thump. As for Yi Qian, half of Mrs. Li's opinion of her was because of Yi Qian, and the other half was because of the first time she saw Yi Qian, she had an inexplicable dislike for her. In addition, Du Jiai would often complain about Yi Qian's shameless behavior, so Mrs. Li's impression of Yi Qian was even worse. A wild girl from the mountains fooling around everywhere, deluding herself to become a phoenix. She was indeed the same as her cousin Yi Ying. But now, even Qin Xiu was implicated. Even if there was no shadow, she had to be on guard. It would be best if she could push that wild girl out. Since she couldn't push the blame onto her son with a family Xia, pushing the blame onto Li Jinyan wasn't a bad idea. An orphan with no parents and an ingrate who wasn't liked by the elders in the family. They were a perfect match. Du Jiai wanted to say more, but Mrs. Li's gaze made her shut up. She sat down sullenly. Mrs. Xiao said something, and Mrs. Li laughed. "Oh, you're too nervous. She's just a wild girl from the mountains with no one to rely on. The only thing she has is her identity as a military academy student. What ability does she have to seduce this and that? My nephew Li Jinyan doesn't come home all year round. It's useless even if she knows him. As for sixth brother, it's the same. He's in the army all year round and doesn't come home. She can't get him either. The Qin family, it's the same situation. So what if she knows him? The three of them won't keep in touch with her all the time. You don't have to be too nervous. Don't be scared by Jai. If old Sixth really likes that wild girl, I won't say anything else, but old Madame Xia will definitely not let her grandson marry a wild girl who has no mother, no father, no one to rely on, and who is always fooling around. Madame Xia. That's right, since Xia Xinhui was avoiding her, she could still go to Madame Xia. Madame Xia definitely wouldn't allow a Yuan to casually bring a girl home. It's fine if she had a clean family background and a good character, but she was a girl who went out to provoke others. Even if A Yuan didn't like her as his mother, she had to stop him. When Du Jiai heard Mrs. Li mention Madame Xia, her cold face slowly turned into a smile. Yes, why didn't she think of the family Xia? A hint of a smile finally appeared on Madame Zhao's cold face. You're right. Old Madame understands. The old folks won't allow old Six to casually bring a wild girl who popped out of nowhere back to the old residence. Tell Jiai to relax. She's just a wild girl. If Qin Xiu really likes her, it's just a temporary novelty. She's naturally she. As for her, as long as Mrs. Qin was satisfied, she would be fine. Don't lose your composure because of someone who's not important. Madame Qin doesn't just need a daughter-in-law. She also needs a virtuous wife who can help Qin Xiu rise in his career. Madame Qin sees and remembers Jiai's efforts. That's why she's always restraining Qin Xiu and not allowing him to casually bring anyone home. Jiai can rest assured based on Madame Qin's attitude. Madame Xiao and Madame Li both thought so. Du Jiai sometimes also thought so. But every time she thought of Yi Qian and what Madame Qin accidentally said, she panicked. She was very, very panicked. There was a kind of panic that couldn't be grasped no matter how hard she tried. Chapter 48-96. Now that she had handed Yi Qian over to Mrs. Xiao to deal with, Mrs. Xiao would go to old Madame Xia again. Du Jiai, who had once again borrowed someone else's knife, coaxed Mrs. Xiao over the phone until the wrinkles around her eyes appeared. It was good to have a daughter. She could act coquettishly and coax people. If A Yuan was a daughter, he probably wouldn't be in this situation today. After ending the call, Mrs. Xiao was a little depressed. Then she thought about how her only son was likely to be coaxed by a wild girl from the mountains who wanted to climb up the social ladder. Mrs. Xiao quickly put the sadness in her heart to the back of her mind and thought about how she needed to find an opportunity to find old Madame Xia. Going directly to find old Madame Xia was definitely not going to work. Old Madame Xia would not be willing to see her either. She had to think of another way. Soon, Mrs. Xiao set her sights on the family Xia's fifth daughter, Xia Yunin, who was rumored to have affairs with celebrities and models from time to time. In order to see old Madame Xia, Mrs. Xiao used a month to set up a trap. After setting up this trap, the one who suffered the most was not Xia Jinyuan, but Xia Yunin, who was always walking by the river and finally had her shoes wet. Thanks to this trap, Xia Yunin, who had been a headache for the entire family, unexpectedly stopped. It was a blessing in disguise. 3 months later, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian found out about Mrs. Zhao's little trick. At this time, in the Gobi Desert where not even a blade of grass could grow, the sun was scorching during the day and the wind was bone-chilling at night. When Yi Qian found out that Mrs. Zhao's trap had caused Xia Yunin to be beaten up by her uncle and sent to the hospital, she couldn't help but be shocked as she held a hot water bottle. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Mrs. Xiao is so powerful. Why didn't I see it before? Yi Qian was ashamed that she had misjudged her. No wonder you stopped her from seeing me back then. It turns out that both you and the commander-in-chief knew how powerful she was. Xia Jinyuan glanced at his silly wife and knocked on her forehead with his gloved hand. What do you think? Madame Xiao is so powerful that even the old madam is amazed by her. She can kill you with just a flick of her finger, given that you're so polite. He had yet to tell her why Mrs. Xiao wanted to scheme against Xia Yunin. If he did, she would be dumbfounded. There was no need to tell her the bad news. She only needed to know what kind of person Madame Xiao was. She was a person who knew how to scheme against others. Yi Qian originally wanted to ask Mrs. Xiao why she set up Xia Yunin, but before she could ask, Xia Jinyuan had already changed the topic. He asked her when the next phase of training would begin, and he planned to enter the second phase the day after tomorrow. While the two were talking, the female squad leader, First Lieutenant Yang Zhen, rushed into the office anxiously. When she saw that the instructor of the male squad was also there, she didn't even salute and said anxiously, "Instructor, Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong are fighting. He's even using his dagger." What? Yi Qian was shocked. He put down the military water bottle on the desk and ran out. "Where are we going to fight? Is there anyone keeping an eye on him? What's the reason for the fight?" Xia Jinyuan's face immediately darkened. He said, "Let's go together," and ran out together. Yang Zhen hurriedly answered as she ran, "It's a small training ground. Our comrades in the class are all there, and we're afraid that something will happen to them." Gao Xiao asked Qiu Tong to come out first. Qiu Tong won against Gao Xiao, but we didn't take it to heart. Later, I don't know what Qiu Tong said, but Gao Xiao suddenly became very agitated. Qiu Tong said a few more words, but I was too far away to hear clearly. Wang Zi said that she heard Qiu Tong say sorry to Gao Xiao, and that's when Gao Xiao became agitated. Yi Qian's eyes turned cold. Who was the first to use his dagger? Gao Xiao was the first. We were all shocked. Yang Zhen's face was also very ugly. As a first lieutenant, she used to be a deputy platoon leader. She came here for her dream, and now she was a squad leader. In the end, she couldn't even manage a 20-person class well. Yang Zhen blamed herself. Yi Qian was surprised to know that Gao Xiao was the first to use her dagger. His face was even colder than the cold wind in the middle of the night. Chapter 48-97. It was not uncommon for soldiers to quarrel in the army, especially between male soldiers. They were all a group of hot-blooded young men, so it was normal for them to bump into each other. However, after a quarrel, it was very likely that they would become close friends, closer than real brothers. Basically, when soldiers quarreled, they would at most be verbally reprimanded and warned by the squad leader, but it would not escalate any further. Fighting was different. If it was just a few punches, a little friction, and no injuries were caused, the reprimand and confinement would be over. If the two of them really fought, all the soldiers would be severely punished because of their fight. Confinement for a few days was a small matter. All of them would not be allowed to sleep, and they would have to carry weights of more than 10 kilometers. These were the consequences of fighting. However, this time it was not as simple as a fist fight. Gao Xiao used her dagger. She swung the dagger that should have been stabbed at the enemy towards her comrade. It was not as simple as a fight, it had directly escalated to intentional injury. Once Qiu Tong was injured, according to military discipline, she would be punished, given a demerit record and confinement. These would be a stain for life. Yi Qian ran extremely fast. Yang Zhen, who had good physical fitness, could only run less than 300 meters before she could no longer keep up with Yi Qian's running speed. Looking at the two figures running as fast as lightning, Yang Zhen began to worry for Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong. In the small sports field, the female soldiers took the opportunity to snatch the dagger in Gao Xiao's hand. One of the vice squad leaders knew that Gao Xiao had caused a big trouble, so he was so angry that he directly punched Gao Xiao in the stomach and shouted angrily, Gao Xiao, do you not want to live any more? How dare you use your dagger? Gao Xiao, whose upper body was tightly held by another female soldier, could not move her arms and forcibly took the vice squad leader's fist. She coldly twitched the corner of her mouth, as she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She snorted and said, "It's just a spar. You think too much." Still stubborn, the vice squad leader's face was livid. He wanted to punch her again. "The instructor will be here soon. You better think about how to explain to the instructor." "Explain what?" Gao Xiao turned her head and stared coldly at Qiu Tong, who was being persuaded by two female soldiers. She sneered, "Qiu Tong, do you think we were just having a spar? Really? Do you really want to have a spar?" A voice as cold as ice came from behind Gao Xiao. Instantly, the atmosphere in the field became stagnant, and the air pressure increased rapidly. Even the air seemed to have solidified, and the female soldiers found it hard to breathe. All the female soldiers, including Gao Xiao, suddenly stiffened and turned around to look. They saw their instructor Yi and the male soldier's instructor Xia standing behind them without them knowing when. The two of them were obviously a handsome man and a beautiful woman, but when they stood together, they looked like immortals in a painting. At this moment, their faces were dark and cold, and their gazes seemed to contain the exact same storm. Just by lightly touching their gazes, one's heart could not stop trembling. Gao Xiao's body stiffened as he whispered to his comrade, who was still hugging him, "Let go of me! Line up! Qiu Qiu of Qiu of Qiu. Of Qiu Tong of Qiu Tong of Qiu Qiu of Qiu 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 of Qiu." The squad leader, Yang Zhen, hadn't arrived yet, so the assistant squad leader had finished organizing the team. The 19 female soldiers kept quiet out of fear. They were so frightened by the two drill masters' cold expressions that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Today, they might not be able to deal with the aftermath. "Who has the dagger?" Yi Qian asked. Every word was as cold as a sword that could hurt people. The female soldiers shrunk their shoulders even more. After 3.5 months of getting along, they had seen Instructor Ye's harsh strictness. They did not dare to do anything in front of her. Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong's spar today was a spontaneous spar that they usually organized to improve their abilities. Who knew? Gao Xiao would suddenly go crazy. Cut line 1. "Girls, Qingyun's cervical vertebra is acting up again. It hurts so much that her head is dizzy and she is nauseous. I have to climb into bed and sleep. Don't wait tonight. Only one more." Chapter 48-98. After the female soldiers snatched the dagger from Gao Xiao's hands, they immediately handed it to the assistant. When the assistant heard Yi Qian ask who had the dagger, she didn't even ask why Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong were arguing. Her heart thumped heavily as she gave Gao Xiao a look that said, "Good luck." Then she handed the dagger to Yi Qian. Reporting, "The dagger is in my hands." The assistant handed over the dagger. When she saw Yi Qian's expression up close, she felt a chill run down her spine. It was as if she had stepped into a frozen pool. It was so cold that her teeth started to chatter. "It's over, it's over. He's not just angry. He'll definitely be severely punished." After taking the dagger, Yi Qian pointed the tip of the dagger at Gao Xiao. His eyes were cold and stern. "Gao Xiao, step forward." The female soldiers in line couldn't help but tighten their abdomens. Their backs straightened, and their expressions became more solemn. "Yes." Gao Xiao stepped forward in response. Yi Qian glanced at Gao Xiao, who stepped forward and said, "Come here." The female soldiers glanced at Gao Xiao from the corners of their eyes. The uneasiness in their hearts grew. Not good, not good, not good at all. Gao Xiao was definitely going to be in big trouble. Instructor Yi definitely wouldn't let her off easily. Gao Xiao's eyes flickered. She pursed her lips. She hesitated for a moment before taking the first step. When she saw Yi Qian's expression become even more ruthless because of her hesitation, Gao Zhao's heart thumped heavily. She took a deep breath and took the second step with firm step. She knew she had made a mistake, but she didn't regret it. No matter what kind of heavy punishment she would face, she would accept it without any objections. With every step, Gao Xiao told herself that she wouldn't regret it. When she took the 10th step and was about a meter away from Yi Qian, a black shadow suddenly shot straight at her. The female soldiers in line only saw their instructor Yi gently wave her arm. The combat dagger in her hand, which was coated with black plating to prevent reflection, turned into a black shadow and directly threw it towards Gao Xiao. The moment the dagger was thrown, the female soldiers' pupils contracted fiercely. They were afraid that the dagger would stab Gao Xiao. Gao Zhao's reaction was also quick. She immediately retracted her steps and stood there in a daze. Then, she slowly lowered her head. The combat dagger that was still in her hand a few minutes ago was now deeply embedded in the yellow sand. "Do you like to use knives?" Not far away, there was a piercing sound that made Gao Zhao's fingers tremble. Gao Xiao slowly raised her head. The moment of fear had finally arrived. "Pick it up. Let me see how capable you are to hold it." Yi Qian undid her camouflage cotton jacket. First, she unbuttoned it, then pulled down the zipper. Seeing that Gao Xiao did not move, she coldly asked Gao Xiao to pick up the dagger again. Pick up the dagger. Every word was filled with danger that made the female soldiers and Qiu Tong's heart tremble. Gao Xiao, why did Instructor Yi let Gao Xiao pick up the dagger again? Gao Xiao didn't know either, but she had to pick it up. Xia Jinyuan was the only one who knew what Yi Qian would do. His handsome face was cold as he reminded him in a low voice, "Just scare him a little. Don't really stab him with a white knife." "Okay." The furious Yi Qian only replied with a single syllable. Xia Jinyuan was still worried that her anger would hurt her body, so he reminded her from behind, "Teach him a lesson. Don't make yourself too angry." Yi Qian said, "Don't worry, I'll control it. I'll take care of it. You go ahead." After a slight pause, she added, "Don't alert the higher-ups. I'll take care of it." She wanted Xia Jinyuan to leave. Xia Jinyuan thought for a moment. Seeing that Yi Qian's emotions did not fluctuate much, and knowing that she had always been calm when dealing with matters, he nodded. "Okay, let me know if there's anything." The instructor needed to teach his soldiers a lesson. As the instructor of the male soldier class, it was indeed inconvenient for him to stay and watch. Chapter 48-99. After Xia Jinyuan left, the cold-faced Yi Qian walked towards Gao Xiao, who was bending down to pick up the dagger. He was only a meter away, so he closed the distance in a few steps. The female soldiers held their breath. What was the instructor trying to do? Qiu Tong bit her lower lip. She was about to step forward when the vice commander shouted, "Qiu Tong, stand still. Can't you see that the instructor is angry?" The class monitor, Yang Zhen, hadn't appeared yet, so the vice commander had to restrain the soldiers. Yang Zhen wanted to rush over as soon as possible, but she was stopped by Company Commander Zhu. He asked her what was wrong and why she was so anxious. He even asked her if something had happened in the class and why she was looking for Instructor Yi. A comrade from the same class had attacked another comrade. Yang Zhen didn't dare to tell Company Commander Zhu about such a serious matter without Yi Qian's permission. Besides, she didn't want Company Commander Zhu to know about it. Company Commander Zhu knew that Yi Qian managed the female soldiers well, so he didn't suspect anything. He asked Yang Zhen a few questions and asked her to leave. As soon as he turned around and left, Yang Zhen's side started to run quickly. She ran so fast that dust started to form under her feet. Company Commander Zhu turned around again and looked at the soldiers beside him for a few seconds. He said in an exasperated tone, "Look at those female soldiers, and then look at all of you. It's simply infuriating. They run faster than all of you. From now on, add 3 kilometers of light running every day. The female soldiers were improving day by day. Company Commander Zhu was happy but also depressed. He didn't feel that the male soldiers were improving at all. Yang Zhen, who was heading towards the field, didn't know that she had unintentionally increased the training for the male soldiers. When she bumped into Xia Jinyuan, she just nodded hurriedly and ran as fast as she could. When she arrived at the small field, Yang Zhen saw 2 figures fighting in the yellow dust a few meters away. Yang Zhen's breathing was erratic as she ran over. Her vision turned dark. They were still fighting. And they hadn't stopped. Where was Instructor Yi? Why didn't he stop them? What were the female soldiers doing standing there? Yang Zhen, who was so angry that her blood rushed to her head, ran until her legs felt like they were on fire. After running a few meters, Yang Zhen suddenly realized that something was wrong. If Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong were still fighting, the female soldiers couldn't be standing there. Then, the 2 people fighting probably weren't Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong. Could it be one of them was Instructor Yi? Thinking of this, Yang Zhen's heart relaxed. As long as it wasn't Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong who were still fighting, it was fine. The female soldiers who were standing in line couldn't bear to watch anymore. Qiu Tong was already laughing when Yi Jian threw her over her shoulder for the 3rd time. After she fell heavily onto the ground, she looked away. Instructor Yi said that since Gao Xiao had the ability to wield a knife, then she must have some skills. Why not let her have a look? Then, Gao Xiao took the dagger and Instructor Yi snatched the saber with his bare hands. Gao Xiao had been thrown to the ground by Instructor Yi the moment he tried to snatch the saber. Now he had been thrown to the ground 6 or 7 times. How long had it been? 2 falls in a minute. They all felt pain when they fell. Previously, it took a few of them some effort to take the dagger from Gao Xiao's hand. Instructor Yi, on the other hand, didn't even need to use any effort. He easily took the dagger every time. Just like now. He directly kicked Gao Xiao's right knee, causing Gao Xiao to groan in pain. One of his knees was heavily kicked into the fine sand. Even if he was wearing thick clothes, it would still be painful to kneel down like this. Gao Xiao, who was kicked by Yi Jian to kneel on one knee, looked a little pale. She still wanted to resist, but her right hand that was holding the dagger was pulled straight by Yi Jian and twisted in the opposite direction. The sharp pain of the twisted shoulder joint made Gao Xiao unable to bear it again and let out a painful cry. Chapter 4900. It wasn't over yet. Her right wrist was twisted again. Gao Xiao screamed twice in pain. She couldn't hold the dagger anymore. For the 6th time, the dagger fell from her hand. Then, Yi Qian kicked her in the back. She stumbled forward and fell to the ground. Her body was covered in dust, and she was in a sorry state. The female soldiers gently closed their eyes. Their eyelids trembled slightly. Beating and kicking. Would Gao Xiao be able to take it? Yi Qian, whose eyes were cold, picked up the dusty dagger. As he walked, he wiped the dust off the dagger with his fingers. He walked to Gao Xiao, who hadn't gotten up yet. He threw the dagger in front of her again. He looked down and said coldly, "Stand up and continue." The female soldiers all looked down. Do they still want to continue? Would Instructor Yi beat Gao Xiao until he was disabled? Don't you like to use knives and guns? Don't you think you're very capable? That you can use knives freely and hurt people? Why can't you get up? Is that all you've got? His cold voice was full of sarcasm. Not only was Gao Xiao embarrassed, but the female soldiers in the formation also couldn't stand it anymore. If she really had the ability, why would she be scolded like this? Instructor Yi was telling Gao Xiao that if she didn't have the ability, she shouldn't come out and embarrass herself. Gao Xiao, who was dizzy from the fall and felt a little nauseous, used her hands to support her upper body. She looked at the dagger in front of her and looked up with a pale face. Her lips moved slightly. Before she could say anything, Yi Qian, who was looking at her coldly, said, I don't want to hear any explanation from you. Stand up and continue. I'll count to 1, 2, 3. If you don't stand up, I'll order all the female soldiers to pick up their daggers and swing them at their comrades. 1. Gao Xiao was shocked. Instructor. 2. Gao Xiao got up. She knew that Yi Qian wasn't joking. She would really do it. 3. Gao Xiao, who had crawled up, clutched the dagger tightly and screamed. She raised the dagger and pounced on Yi Jian again without any order. As soon as he moved, his stomach churned and a wave of sourness rushed straight to his throat. Yi Qian, who had dodged to the side, turned a blind eye to her discomfort. Didn't you want to use a dagger? Just let her use it all at once. To actually swing a dagger used to kill enemies at a comrade who was fighting side by side with him. How cruel! No. Light. Mercy. Yi Qian's eyes turned even colder when she saw the disorderly attack. Stabbing a comrade with a sword was the most serious crime. Brandishing a sword while not being able to wield it was the second most serious crime. Today, she would teach Gao Xiao a lesson that she would never forget. With one hand clasping Gao Xiao's wrist, she used her other hand to chop off her wrist. At the same time, she tripped Gao Xiao's right leg and used her knee to block Gao Xiao's knee to prevent Gao Xiao from kicking. Gao Xiao, who had lost all resistance in her hands and legs, was once again in pain. The pain in her wrist caused her entire hand to tremble uncontrollably. The pain in her wrist was still spreading throughout her body. Following that, she felt another pain in her right knee that was blocked by Yi Qian's knee. In that instant, she lost all her strength and knelt down on one knee again. In her panic, Gao Xiao tried to prop herself up with both hands. Unfortunately, Yi Qian didn't give her the chance. He raised his leg and used his calf as a point of strength to hit Gao Xiao's back hard. Gao Xiao's voice cracked as she was hit in the back. Her palm rubbed against the gravel, and she felt a burning pain in her palm. She fell to the ground, and a layer of dust rose around her body. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.